What's up, everyone? Welcome to Normal America Show. Host Rob Noor. I'm back, baby. Back in my home office. Glad to be here. Sorry I did not stream last evening. Work situation came up, and unfortunately was unable to stream. It was sort of a last minute thing, but I'm here. I'm ready to go. I'm in a good mood. I was just watching Christmas Vacation with my son and with my wife. He was not into the movie until the scene where the squirrel came in. Then he was into it. So, good show for you tonight. We're going to be talking to friend of the show, lawyer, potentially criminal Sean. We're going to start off talking about Hunter Biden pardon, and then we'll branch out from there. We have a lot to talk about. I think it'll be interesting to get his thoughts on the Hunter Biden pardon, any potential pardons coming in the future for Joe Biden, what he thinks those may be, and then the resignation of Christopher Wray 2 nights ago. By the way, I'm probably gonna remove that stream with from 2 nights ago, talking to Casimir and others, because I don't want to implicate anyone in saying something that could get them in trouble in the future that I'm a friend of. So we'll see. I will not be asking any questions about Rakita. I don't know much about Nick Rakita, nor do I know what the situation is with him and Sean, etc. So, but who knows where the topics will go other than that. What's up, Raceland? But no, it's good to be here. A quick reminder, until I make some adjustments, see what I want to do, the situation on Twitch is going to be slightly different. So if you sub or donate on Twitch, I won't be able to see it now. So if you just put in the chat, if someone subs or whatever, I'll try to give you a shout out. Though clearly, when I'm talking to my guest, it'll be hard for me to call those sorts of things out. I will get to all super chats on X by the end of the show. My car's back. $620 basically was the damage to get it fixed and inspected. New tie rod end, alternator, battery. So, well, I'll still take your money, Aftershock. Don't get me wrong. So it's nice to get the car all fixed up. Hopefully we're good to go on that. Sean should be in about 10 minutes. We planned on 7 p.m. Eastern time. So just do a little talking before then. One of the things I think that's worth saying about some criticism that I've gotten recently, and I think it's worth addressing, maybe there is a point to this criticism. I'll ask you all, particularly the ones I trust. Thanks so much, Zen, for the $5. I appreciate it. I really do. You guys are the best. I appreciate all money. Thank you, Aftershock, for the sub on Twitch. I'm going back to check it. If anyone would bullshit me on it, it's you, Aftershock. No, thank you, Aftershock, as always. So I'll ask the opinion of people, anyone's opinion, but particularly I'll be paying attention to the people that I know have been a fan of the show for a while, or people that have called in. So a couple nights ago, I had a person call in. Well, let's start here. I'll ask, like, I'm tired of talking about the Christian nationalism stuff. I gotta be honest. I'm just tired of it. I'm tired of talking about should women have the right to vote or not and Christian nationalism. I just am. And it seems like I love doing the call-in shows. I love talking to people on different perspectives. But it seems evident to me now that it's encouraging. It's going to put me in a situation where I feel like I'm repeating myself on a subject that I don't really want to talk about that much, because quickly what happens is you end up taking it to a place where I think some things are questionable with terms of service. For example, it's probably not doing me any favors on the algorithm, I don't have a lot of people that watch on Twitch, Swallow, but that's okay. The quality of the show will be better than the numbers of viewers seem to indicate, but that's okay. More people end up watching on YouTube and X than they do on. Anyways, back to the point here. We quickly go from a Muslim that wants to talk about why I'm a bad Christian because I don't want my government being Christian nationalist, which I get fed up with because we had that conversation previously. To a person comes in and says that I treated that person unfairly, so I talk to them. To then another person comes in and starts off talking about how I'm a bad Christian because I do not think it should be enshrined in law to stone to death anyone who's gay. Now, I don't think that that's helping my channel to have videos like that are continually up on my channel, particularly when many of these platforms are looking for an excuse to boot you off anyways, someone like me off. So it seems that it's a recurring theme now, that anytime I open up the calls, the vast majority of the calls are going to be why I'm a bad Christian, because I don't want to punish gay people, because I don't want Christian nationalism. Yeah, I know. I got to look up how to do the short stream at the same time. I do have to look that up. We'll see what I could do on that end. So it quickly leads to, and I don't know. That's just how I feel. I understand the point of a call-in show is that the audience wants to talk about certain things, and I am honored that anyone watches me. It really is. It's very humbling, and I'm very appreciative. And I know a lot of people that watch me have come from other channels, like The Crucible. And I know that I've debated Andrew Wilson many times on Christian nationalism and gay marriage and other things like that. And so that's going to be a question, or on the 19th Amendment, women's right to vote. So I know that's something that's going to be on the mind of viewers of mine that maybe come from those communities that say, well, I like what Rob says on other things, but I don't like what he has to say on those things. But it makes it repetitive and redundant. So the question I have is this. The guy calls in and starts with, I think that you're bad because you don't want to stone to death all gay people. And I don't have any respect for that opinion. I don't at all. There are certain topics that I'm willing to hash out and talk to. The audio sucks here today. Is anyone else having trouble with my audio? Let me know if that's the case. I'll try to make adjustments. So anyways, when someone says something like that, there's rational ways to go about it, but it does a little bit sort of aggravate me when someone says, I'm more moral than you. It's already like, okay. And then when their reasoning is because you don't want to kill people of this particular persuasion. That to me is, a little bit, I don't know. So here's what I did. I think people that talk like that, oftentimes, particularly that criticize your Christianity, I think that for me, it's easy to talk like that when you're anonymous. When you're just some avatar and anonymous name. And you could say those things. But if you're really saying that it's important for everyone to talk like this, if you're walking the path of Christ, then why are you unwilling to not put a name or a face to it? I have had a lot of people criticize me that was me attempting to dox someone. Me saying, okay, well, what's your real name then, if you feel strongly about this? Is that over the line? Now, I would never seek out this person, try to find their name, put their name up against their will. But asking them, well, if you're a good Christian, are you willing to say this stuff in a non-anonymous format? Is that over the line? I don't know. My gut says no, but if enough, I'm willing to listen to someone tell me I'm wrong, that I shouldn't say that. But that's not, to me, that's not doxing. Like, if Aftershock comes on, I'm like, hey, Aftershock, by the way, what's your real name? That's not me doxing Aftershock. By the way, Aftershock's real name's Adam Schiff. I believe that's his real name. So, so I'm not. I don't know. For me, it's like. I asked where he worked. Right. How's that any different than what I'm saying? The point, the criticism I'm making is you are saying something and claiming that this is what it means to be a good Christian. It also means speaking the truth even when it's unpopular. And so if you're unwilling to do that, if you're unwilling to say, well, I'm not going to say what my name is, or the reason I bring up the place of work is because he knows that he is afraid to say those opinions because it will cost him socially. That's the point. Like, would you have been, if you're reading the Bible, would it have been, the disciples, would they have been Christ-like? Would they have been Christian? If they're like, well, I'm unwilling to preach the word of Christ publicly in my name. I'll put out pamphlets, but I'm not going to go out there and do it with my name. Isn't that something to be rebuked? That's the point I was trying to make. I'm not implying he should be fired. I was quite honest with what my opinion was. I don't understand your position, Nico. So you're saying by asking his real name and his place of work, that's me doxing and attacking his family? That's what you're saying? I don't know. So, that was the point of me asking that. Anyways, let's see if Sean's ready. Oh, he's not referencing me. Yeah, I get that doxing, yeah, see, he is referencing me. I don't know. My gut feeling is I disagree. If someone says, you're not a real Christian, I'm a real Christian, because the reason you're not a real Christian is you don't want to stone people to death. And I say, well, the Bible also says that you shouldn't be a coward, that you should freely speak the word of God. So why don't you do that? Sean will be here. No, I think that the continuing pushing the subject was once you saw the delusion. Once you saw that he was, instead of admitting that he was a coward. Yeah, you're right. I'm a coward. I won't say it. He made up story after story. Well, the reason I can't say it's because the government wants to assassinate me. And the reason the government wants to assassinate me is because I'm basically one of the most important people in the history of the world, because I'm the only person ever that has debunked evolution. And evolution is the praising of mutations, which will end all of humanity. That's why I kept on. Nico, I don't understand. Are you saying So Nico's saying I dox him. Nico's saying I was rude for doxing someone. Okay, that's your opinion, Nico. I disagree. I don't think that was doxing him. I understand you think it's rude. What's more rude, wanting to stone someone to death for being gay, or asking someone that claims that I'm a shitty Christian because I don't want to do that and I need to follow the word of Christ, what their real name is, else they're not being biblical or Christian themselves because they're unwilling to preach the word of God through their real name? What is ruder? Yeah, I think the person was probably a schizophrenic. All right, let's start the call. Let's get my headset on. That'll be necessary now. Oh, you're going to lose me visually here for a second, by the way. Here we are. What's up? Can you hear me?
Hold on, can you hear me?
Now I got you.
All right, there we go.
All
Sorry.
right.
Normally on Discord, I use push to talk.
Oh yeah. I didn't know I got. So I did this 24-hour stream, and I had some like normie people on that don't stream, like a couple of congressmen. So I had to get a Zoom subscription for that because
Oh,
I don't, it's a hard sell asking a 68-year-old congressman like, hey, do you have Discord? And so I didn't know what was. I thought we used Discord last time, but I was like, whatever you
yeah.
want to use is fine by me. So
Oh, I use it all. I did want to say your one show where you had Andrew Wilson on, and he was talking to you about the sector, and he's like, "You don't understand. Like, you guys think it was the jungle on Twitch." He's like, "But these guys are really crazy." I thought was hilarious because it's like that's a pretty good assessment of it. Like, they are absolute loons.
who is it specifically? This sector, like which types of group?
So, like, Nick Fuentes is part of the sector.
Okay.
Ethan Ralph is part of the sector. Dick Masterson's part of the sector. I'm technically like sector adjacent because Nick Rekieta was part of the sector pretty much, and
You-
because I was kind of involved with that, I'm sector adjacent. I'm kind of like Pisco in the sense of like Nick's like Destiny, I'm Pisco.
There we
So
go.
in that regard,
Well,
yeah.
it's funny because my chat asked me before you came on. They're like, ask him what stuff's like being in the Rakita orbit. I'm like, I'm not gonna ask him that. Then you kind of bring it up right at the beginning, anyways. But
Yeah.
I didn't know. I'd seen like 2 or 3
Yeah.
things with Nick, just literally just law stuff. He seemed fine to me. Everybody has their personal demons. I don't really get involved in that all kind of stuff. But yeah, I mean, I had a slight run in with the Groypers one time, and I mean, for me, I think the little bit I've seen of Nick Fuentes, I think he's talented. I think that he has a charisma. He's smart.
Yeah.
I don't know that a lot of the people in his orbit you could say that much about. They just seem to be like coattail riders, and without the charm, the sort of the message doesn't. It seems even more palpable without like an intelligence and a charm, and so that was my run-in with it. It quickly became, just attacks on me and my wife and all of that stuff. I don't know what the whole message is. I'm gay for being married or something like that and having kids.
He's got a lot of. Fuentes got a lot of issues now, especially he got arrested. But
legal, yeah, we could actually bring it. I did see that. That was actually. It's one of the things rare things I agreed with Pisco on legally was. I thought his initial take was, yeah, it sucks to get doxxed. It sucks for people to come to your house harassing. I don't think that necessarily gives you the right to just open your door and immediately spray someone in the face with mace.
No.
Well,
and the funny part is because, the whole thing with the sector, like, the gay ops that go on in the sector and the doxing and all, that's Nick Fuentes' dox has been known for many a year already. So when the left found it, they're like, oh, we found them. Like, you guys didn't find anything that I already didn't know or nobody else knew. When I saw it on Twitter, though, I'm like, oh my God, they found it. And they started running wild. Yeah, but he's going to have a tough time because you have to show, now obviously the same standard for defending your property is not the same as defending yourself. But if she had showed up and she's carrying like a crowbar, or if she's carrying like a Molotov cocktail in her hand, like, okay, you could presume there's some intent there. But if she just comes, walking up to the door, even if it's for her to come harass you and bust your balls, like, you're not gonna, it's gonna be a tough sell to the jury, because she hadn't, at least from what we could see on video, she didn't even get to the part, she was about to like hit the doorbell, and he's already there, just like, whack, right in her face, and I'm like...
Now, in his defense, I don't know, maybe she called or texted him beforehand and was like made threats, and we don't get to see that in video. I don't know what his legal defense will be. Is that like, does it come into play as a potential legal defense to be like, well, I'm a public figure who gets threats sent to me all the time, and like I try to keep my location a secret, and so someone that showed up like this, I would view as more threatening than just like the average person who has someone knock on their door.
I mean, yes and no. I mean, part of the answer is you live in suburban Chicago, so, this thing's you can summon armed men with this thing. It's actually kind of neat. in 2024.
Right.
That's going to be an issue for him. Number one. Number two is also you could have just kept the door closed. It's if you've ever watched Apocalypse Now, they talk about never get out of the boat.
Yeah.
Well, never get out of the boat unless you're going all the way. And why get out of here? Why leave your fortified stronghold behind that solid wood door that he had a deadbolt and a chain lock on? Why do any of that? Just stay right there. I mean, it's not the first time he's been doxxed. It's not the first time he's dealt with problems. So I just don't understand why he reacted the way he did.
Yeah, and for me, there's something like I understand it. Just having a far more limited. I think I'm. This is subjective, but I think you would agree with this. I think I'm far less inflammatory than someone like Nick. But I certainly have far less of a, imprint on the social media landscape. Even me, I've had people contact my place of employment and say things were untrue. I've had people threaten to show up to my house. I've had people call into my phone, like using some phishing app, so it looks like my mom's number. So somehow they found my cell phone number. So there is something cathartic about, like, good, one of these people getting theirs. Someone got pepper sprayed in the face, but that's not really how the law works. It doesn't matter if you say, yeah, I can understand how it would suck to be harassed like this, and so screw that person for harassing. That still doesn't give you the legal right to just be like, well, I'm just going to open the door because I want to give this person what for.
Well, I will say there is an argument to be made at times, and I've made this argument in court, sometimes successfully, sometimes not, that person, somebody needed their ass kicked. Or it's, as they say, and they would say, he needed killed defense. He needed killing. Sometimes that person needs that. And I'm sure, and ultimately, when I first saw this, that Nick Fuentes maced some lady in the face and that she was some purple-haired Kamala Harris supporter, I'm like, God, thank you for this gift. And then you find out that she's Jewish and he's an anti-Semite. You're like, how does this get any better? And I was waiting for it to get better, and it did. But, I mean, yes, it was hilarious, and we got to watch basically, as I call it, tar jousting. They both, she wanted to go cow tipping, and the cows, the cow fought back, and it was funny watching these two idiots.
Yeah.
They might as well just run into each other, but
that's how I feel.
mean, at the end of the day.
Well, the last thing I'll say is on this subject, because I think there's more interesting thing to get to, but I know that the law is going to be different in every state, but potentially, I'm not looking at what the maximum sentence he could get is, but what would be in a situation like this, what's a reasonable person looking to get? Just a fine, or are they looking at maybe some probation or jail time?
There'd be some probation. I mean, he doesn't have a criminal record. This is a first-time offense. This wasn't a savage and brutally violent attack.
Right.
He was at his own house. This lady clearly was going over there to fuck with him. So a lot of those things are going to play in his favor. I mean, there's also the fact that he is some sort of federal asset, so his handlers might get involved and take care of some problems for him. I mean, there's a reason why he wasn't indicted for what happened on January 6th. I'm just saying with that. So, it's not, he only faces at a maximum a year in jail. And he's not going to get a year in jail. I don't, so yeah, nothing, as much as people would like to see him go to jail, that's not going to happen. And I loved all the comments about him. People like, oh, he's going to have so much fun finding a boyfriend in jail. And I'm like, joke's on you, because he probably is gay.
Yeah.
Enjoy it.
It's just the whole thing. I mean, for me, I don't know. I see this this mindset, and I understand where it comes from. And look, I'm friends with an awful lot of people here in rural Pennsylvania. Everybody I know owns guns. A lot of it has to do, it's hunting season now, so a lot of it has to do with hunting. But it's definitely above and beyond that. It's a symbol of pride to go shooting with your friends and stuff like that. And there's a mindset around here that's just boy, I wish someone would break into my house. And so, I get that mindset, but my mindset in it is, if I'm ever in a similar situation where I think someone's trying to harass me at the door, I'm locking the door and just going to call the cops. I don't give a shit. I don't need the potential legal problems. I have a kid here. I have a wife. I don't care how macho I think I am, how tough or how armed I am. I don't want to escalate to anything that could lead to jeopardizing my family. So, I don't know. For me, I probably a poor decision, even if cathartic for Nick in the moment. That's how I would look at it.
And the other thing, too, is, it sounds great, the idea of you stopping a bad guy in your house, but now you've got to deal with the fact that like you might kill someone, and you might end up like completely destroyed psychologically
Right.
from that. You shoot somebody, they're gonna bleed all over the place, and let's say you got your insurance to take care of that. You know how they fix that? They have to strip everything down to the studs. Like that person's gonna bleed through your subfloor, bleed into your basement. Your house is gonna be full of it. You know, there's all those issues. Like there's all that on top of it, and then also at the end of the day, there's also the problem of a jury might say, "Yeah, we don't think you should have done that."
Yeah. And I think that it's a good point. The obviously, let me be clear. I'm not saying Nick did anything close to the sort or any. I'm not accusing him, but like I do think, just in general, anytime you have to, I've even seen it with. I've known people that have fought in war. I've known people that are police officers that had to shoot someone.
People working firefighters and EMS people.
Yeah, I've talked
just
to
driving up to an accident could traumatize people.
I've talked to people that had like PTSD just from beating the shit out of someone, and they ended up hospitalized, right? Like with their jaw wired shut. And everyone agreed, that fight that I saw, everyone agreed the person was defending himself. There wasn't a legal charge brought against him. He wasn't sued. Someone harassed him and his girlfriend at a bar, threw the first punch. He hit him one time. This drunk shattered his jaw. He felt terrible about that. Ended up going to therapy because you just don't know. Some people could do stuff like that and it's no big deal. They're like, hey, it wasn't my fault. Other people, there can be a psychological effect. So God willing, I'm never put in a situation where that need of defense is.
And if somebody ever breaks in my house and I'm yelling, and from the bedroom, I'm just hollering, like, get out of here, the police are on their way, and I just hear them run out the door, I'm fine with that.
So if you're talking shit on, the sector, and you're talking about Nick, which I'll be clear, like, I don't follow the shit, so I don't know if he's gay. I don't know if he's a Fed asset.
Fuentes? Oh, yeah. Okay,
but do you now get the counter where people are like, well, you were in the circle with Nick Rakita, and look what he did. Do you get that shit from them? Did they come at you with that?
No, because I really don't talk any, like, I mean, and I think the talking shit about Nick Fuentes, kind of like everybody has said that about him, but no, I've never had anybody try to threaten me, and it's like, when people like, I've had people truly threaten to kill me, like a handful of times in my life.
Probably in your job, though. Like,
well, yeah, it was job related, and I'm like, And then there was one time I got threatened, and I was standing in the door of my car and getting ready to pull a gun out. But other than that, like when people talk on the internet, like I'm never like it's the internet is stupid. The internet is retarded. I'm not worried about people on the internet. Like, okay, well, I'm gonna kill you. I know where you live. Okay, yeah, whatever. Oh, so scared. Like that's the way you have to look at it, because mostly like, and then if somebody does come and they want to strap on the cleats and play, I guess I'll call the police. And if you happen to get through the door before the police show up, then fine. I guess we'll find out.
Well, my understanding,
I really don't want that.
From the Groypers, I'll say this: like I know as little about them as anyone, but yeah. I don't know that they've ever used physical violence on anyone. For me, it's just like making fun of people online, which to me, it could cross the line. Like I've heard allegations of people doxing and swatting. I don't know who started what. I'm not really taking it. That shit's over the line, and that could have serious effects. But it's, shit talking online. That doesn't bother me. Yeah. Like if someone wants to make weight jokes of me and, whatever, question my sexuality. I don't really give a shit about any of that. That's fine by me. My only thing is I just wish it was funnier. Most of the time when people are like making those sorts of insults, it's like, well, at least come up with something original. Sometimes I'm surprised. There's been some good weight jokes at my expense, and I'm like, all right, I'll take that. Like, if it's funny, that forgives all. Like, yeah, we'll deal with that. So, but all right, getting away from. I didn't think we'd get into that.
Sorry. Well, I also didn't realize we were starting like live, but that's fine too.
Oh,
I was getting. Yeah.
Well, you didn't say anything you regret. I could take it off.
No. No.
Okay. No. Well, anyways, my guest is potentially Criminal Sean, friend of the show, has been here before. I really wanted to talk to you when the Hunter Biden pardon came down.
Yeah.
Because to me, I know I have my preconceived notions and biases where I think Hunter Biden was basically was operating as a foreign lobbyist, and that there's been this cover up through all these institutions to sort of cover that up. But when something like this occurs, the part of the story that's difficult for someone like me to understand, who's not a lawyer, is How unusual is a pardon like this? Because we hear, oh, well, people have pardoned family members before, but then I also hear, but this is a very rare pardon that goes back like nearly a decade and covers any potential crime, even those. So I wanted to talk to you about like what your overall feelings were on the pardon, and I'll kind of tell you what my gut feeling is. And so the first question I wanted to ask is, are you
Yeah.
surprised by this? Is there something, is the type of pardon unusual to you? Or is this something that you think's pretty common, or at least reasonably common, that it didn't raise an eyebrow for you?
Um. Well, I mean, it's when it comes to the idea of the pardon itself, it is what it is, and this is people don't think pardons be like they are, but they do. I mean, it's kind of like you don't think the universe be like it is. When you read the pardon clause, it says the president shall have the power to grant reprieves and pardons for all offenses, for any offenses against the United States except for impeachment. That's it. So you've got one thing you can't do: impeachment.
Mm-hmm.
So, the way I had a professor in college say it, the Declaration of Independence is poetry. The Constitution's an instruction manual. That's your instruction parameter. Congratulations, you've bought a United States government. What can you do with it? You can pardon people. What are the limits on your pardon, the ability of this machine to pardon people? Just can't use it for impeachment purposes. That means I can use it to mow my lawn, slice French fries, cut my hair. Just can't do an impeachment with it. So it's not really like it is a plenary power. It's an unlimited power, and it's one of those few where there's no control, like there's no oversight of it. It's a political power. Generally speaking, pardons are specified to people and offense normally. So be like, Rob, you robbed a bank, and I pardon you for the federal crime of bank robbery that you committed this day, or any bank robberies you committed. Let's say you're a serial bank robber. Or they would say anybody in the Rob Nora gang, I pardon you for that. Kind of like the draft dodgers. The draft dodgers were a class who were pardoned. We don't, anybody who didn't show up, but he'd have to go through and sit there and like scratch out. Jimmy Carter had to scratch out like 100,000 of those. He just did a blanket pardon. Lincoln did that after the Civil War to all the Southern soldiers. So it's not abnormal. It's just we normally don't. It's just not, for the ones we have seen. I think if you went back through them, I think there's probably some that are a little blankety. Like Nixon's was pretty much anything he did at all from 72 to 74, you're good, or 72 to 73, you're good. It's not. It's a power. It is a devastating power, in its scope. But it is meant for the president to be able to take care of people in a political way and allow him to act in a political way. So that it's yeah.
So I'm not surprised that a pardon occurred with his son, and I don't even find that to be immoral. I think that if I'm being honest, my son's only 3, so the biggest crimes he's committed is like stealing cookies and stuff. But presumably, I become president when I'm 60, and my son's 23, and he's accused of money laundering or maybe murder, sexual assault, something like that. Maybe you re-question it, but some sort of financial crime or drug crime or gun possession crime, like Hunter Biden's accused. I'm telling you right now, I'm pardoning my son. Like, period. End of story.
And that's.
So I don't have a problem with that. My problem lies in what I suspect is sort of the self-benefit to Biden, is that the pardon goes back to 2014 and is clearly designed to sort of bury the story of this ongoing saga for various reasons. One, because we still have a situation ongoing in Ukraine, and it doesn't look good for people that are already questioning how long should we fund that. Second, because...
Oh, you mean those guys that helped the Al-Qaeda guys in Syria, Ukraine?
Right. Good stuff, right? Yeah. So there's that. Then we have the idea of they use this as lawfare against Trump. The first impeachment against Trump was based on the Ukrainian investigation or alleged investigation that was going to take place. And then, of course, you have the 51 former intel officials that said that the laptop was supposedly Russian. Yeah. So there's a lot of reason for people in the establishment, especially Joe Biden, to not want an incoming Trump administration to say, okay, we're going to keep this investigation of Hunter Biden going. Did you read that? Similar to me, that's why the crimes go back to 2014?
Oh, 100%. Yes. It's like in 2014, it's like, what happened in 2014? What magical thing happened? And then, like when you read about like Burisma, it wasn't just Hunter Biden. Like I think it was Mitt Romney had a kid who was benefiting from that. I think it was not Nancy Pelosi, but forget whoever. But yeah,
John Kerry had a family member, I think, that was involved.
Yeah. It's all part of the hunt.
The one guy, I forget his name, but the former dude from like the CIA that was one of the appointment in CIA. Like you had all of these people, and even beyond that, like sort of the NGO cutout of the CIA is the Atlantic Council, right? The Atlantic Council
and the endowment, the
National Endowment.
The National Endowment. National Endowment for Democracy, like all of it. USAID is, they act like that's not a CIA cutout, but.
And so, it's amazing when you go back and you look at the story and how blatant it was. Like, just for my audience and yours that might not know the story, I'll try to do this in under 30 seconds. Joe Biden's appointed under Obama as the point person to deal with corruption in Ukraine. One of the places they say corrupt is this company Burisma, who is a private company, but it has all of these sort of natural gas leases, etc. that it's getting. It's ran by this guy Zlochevsky. It's considered a pro-Russian oligarch. Hunter Biden gets a job there on the board of directors, despite the fact he has no expertise in gas or with anything with Ukraine. Joe Biden then ends up giving a quid pro quo of $1 billion to guarantee sort of a bank loan, IMF loan, $1 billion of your tax dollars, and said, you're not going to get this Ukraine unless you fire this prosecutor that's allegedly, at least on paper, looking into Burisma. That prosecutor gets fired, and promptly the new prosecutor comes in within 6 months, drops the cases.
Within hours of that phone call.
Well, within hours of that call, right. Once the new prosecutor came in, it took him less than 6 months to completely drop the case against Burisma, which then Hunter Biden continued to work at Burisma for a year after, made millions of dollars, and all of a sudden you have places like the Atlantic Council that started to get involved in business relationships with Burisma once these cases were dropped. Now, this is what, 4 or 5 former directors of the CIA that's on board with the Atlantic Council. And then meanwhile, when the laptop story comes out in 2020, you have all these former intel officials, many of which work at places like the Atlantic Council, NGO cutouts that are just the public face. They're all of a sudden saying, well, the idea that this laptop's real and all this stuff about Burisma, this sounds like Russian disinformation. It is as blatantly corrupt as you could imagine. And the fact that the FBI chose not to have an immediate investigation, there wasn't an immediate special counsel, etc., going all the way back to 2016, to me, it impugns all of their credibility. And there's been this ongoing battle since Trump came into office to use lawfare to go after him, where they've been hell or high water trying to prevent any investigation into this because it impugns so many people in Washington. And, to me, I've debated this so many times, like with lawyers like Pisco and with other people. And, they always default to like, well, Republicans were in the FBI. Republicans in the House investigated this and they didn't recommend any criminal charges. But to me, it's not just, I think there are crimes, at least the very least of which are FARA crimes, failing to register some foreign lobbyists. And there's obviously the tax crimes and stuff. But to me, it's greater than just the crimes of Hunter Biden. I don't really care about that. It speaks to the corruption of the system entirely for covering this up.
I mean, Rob, sir, are you dare alleging that there are issues of integrity within the state security apparatus? I mean, the idea of the FBI, fidelity, bravery, integrity, when they're out trolling Muslim guys into becoming terrorists, it's like the meme says, the FBI foiled an FBI terror plot.
Right.
Well, how many times do we see that? Going all like the FBI. When you think about what they've done, J. Edgar Hoover started it, and it uses a blackmail empire. And then through the 40s and 50s, illegally surveilling Americans. And then you get into the 60s, writing letters to MLK, telling him to kill himself and sending him death threats, trying to undermine the civil rights movement. COINTELPRO, PatCon, and then apparently some of these white supremacist groups are running around robbing banks and armored cars in the 70s. Oh, we might have actually started that. Them screwing up going after the Weather Underground. That one's really sus. Everything. And then you get into the 90s, oh boy. And then you get into the 2000s with the War on Terror. and then they happen to lie on a warrant to a FISA court. Just the one guy, just that one guy, and he didn't even get disbarred. It's it's a lot of corruption there, and it's remember, and also those intel officials. Yeah, 51 people say it was bad. I'm like, the same people that brought you the Iraq War, and that there were WMDs, and that Saddam was full of them. And that Al Qaeda was running around Iraq, which they actually weren't. So yes.
Well, they tried to sell that. They tried to sell that like Hussein, Saddam Hussein and Bin Laden were like chums. They hated each other. But that was part of the narrative. They're like, oh, Bin Laden and Saddam Hussein.
Yeah. Well, I think you're roughly my age, right? I'm
40.
39.
Yeah.
Okay.
40, yeah.
So I remember as a kid, like I'm like 15, 16 years old, and they're like, there was like an airplane body that was sitting there, and they were letting Al Qaeda guys practice on it, like how to do. And it's like, no, Iraq had its own counterterrorism like guys, and they were, granted they were, just utter dog shit because they were Saddam's people, but yeah, they were like doing all that stuff, and it's like, okay, but yes, it's all a scam, it's all a hustle, and yes, FARA is a big one for Hunter. The Foreign Corrupt Practices Act is another one. With the tax evasion usually leads to two other crimes: money laundering and structuring. Because if you're trying to hide it off your taxes, well, you got to put the money somewhere. And if you put it in a bank, the Bank Secrecy Acts and the Reporting Acts are going to get kicked in. So you have to launder your money to make it clean. And then obviously to stay off the radar for reporting, you structure. And structuring is when you take, guys, and do not do this. Like $10,000, yes, the $10,000 is a default reporting standard. But if you come into your bank every week and deposit $9,000, they're still going to report that,
right?
Because that's suspicious activity as well. Intentionally, and here's the thing, chat: you may have a legitimate source of money, but the fact you structured it, it doesn't matter that you had ill-gotten gains or you were, not intending to do it. It's still illegal. And there's I read about this in my white-collar crime class. There was a guy, he came over from somewhere in the old country, somewhere not here. And it was like you were always worried about the police finding you and banks telling people you had money. So he had multiple banks in the area he had accounts at. And he would give his brother some of the money, and they would split up. That way, in case somebody got robbed, that they wouldn't lose all their money from their business that week. And it was a couple $1,000s to like each one of the family members. And they would go run and deposit the money. He got charged with structuring, and they took all the money. Because he wasn't doing anything illegal. He paid his taxes on it. He declared every dollar. But it was still structuring. So structuring is another thing. Bribery offenses. Hunter's penchant for hookers. I'm sure he violated the Mann Act, which means, women traveling across state lines for prostitution purposes. Basically human trafficking. I'm sure he was doing whatever it was when he's out there internationally, cruising for hookers. That can get you in trouble. If you commit crimes like that overseas, you can still be prosecuted in the United States for it. So yeah, he's done a lot of crimes, and those are just the ones we know of. But it's literally every possible crime he could have committed. He could have sold the Chinese a nuclear weapon, and he's immune at this point. So
here's a question I have, just to go. Now, I know this is sort of rehashing, particularly because of the pardon, but I still think that it's important for things to come to light and for these conversations to happen, because we'll get to it here eventually. But to me, the real villain's not Hunter Biden or even Joe Biden. It is the system, particularly those at the FBI, that were pressuring IRS agents and others to silence this story. That, to me, is a far greater threat than the individuals. But going back to the individuals, Joe Biden specifically, one of the most frustrating things that I heard constantly was, well, you have to have a direct money trail for it to be some sort of accusation of illegality or even unethical standard for Joe Biden to sort of, let's assume that he forced the firing of this prosecutor, right, to stop the investigate. Viktor Shokin was his name, the Ukrainian prosecutor, to stop the investigation into Burisma. They would say, well, show me the bank account. Show me Joe Biden's bank account. One, they never got access to Joe Biden's bank accounts. But secondly, is there a process in the law that says, if I do something illegal, like pressure someone to fire someone using my political office, not to benefit me, but to benefit my family, like, because for me, if I'm 60, 70, who cares? I got enough money to,
Yeah.
end of my days, but I'm really concerned about my son being set up for his life. So isn't it true that you could still use your office in an illegal or an ethical manner and not receive one dime? You're just doing it to set your brother up, to set your son up?
I mean, yeah, there's nothing like to really stop that necessarily, like at the federal level. There's you could be charged with like obstructing justice and trying to lean on people like that. That could become an issue, but ultimately, you're the president, you're the chief executive, so you are the chief like the police work for you. So if you tell the police to lay off, is it really a problem if you're in charge of the police and you could tell them don't do X? Well, you're telling them because you're in charge of them. So it's a little unique when you get to the president in that regard.
Did you think the initial plea deal that was offered to Hunter Biden, did you think that was unusual? It seemed, I believe it was.
Yes.
It was because there's again, someone that's not in the law field. We hear these terms, pleas, pardons, and we just have like, for me, I can't speak for everyone. I just have a general idea, like, well, shit, I've watched Law and Order. I kind of get some idea. But can you explain what was going on with that plea deal and why you would think it was unusual?
Well, the plea deal was basically what the pardon was.
Right.
Because in the plea deal, he basically got immunity from all acts going back to 2014. And that was in the gun case. And it was like you complete diversion, and because of that diversion, we agree not to prosecute. So in a plea deal, you can get an agreement from a prosecutor. We agree not to prosecute you for this crime or that crime. And I get those a lot. That my guy has committed another crime. Like we found, it's actually very common, like drugs. It takes, you send the drugs out to get tested. It's going to be months and months and months because everybody sends their drugs to the crime lab, state crime lab. So it's going to take a long time. So, we're all the way through another case and we find out about this other drug case. Prosecutor called me like, hey, we got a new one coming. Okay, well, we're taking care of our business here. And then, sometimes we work it out where, there's actually a stipulation saying we agree not to prosecute any other prior offenses committed prior to the date of this plea. So then if he goes out after his plea, if he goes out and commits new crimes, well, then that's on him. So it's not uncommon for that. It's just the way they did it. He basically got full immunity for everything. And the judge said, that's when the judge asked, like, that's a lot of immunity. What is this meant for? And Hunter's attorney's like, it meant to cover everything. And the judge looked at the prosecutor's like, do you agree? Now, I think they were going to say yes. Their hope was the judge wasn't going to question them. Their hope was nobody was going to notice. And if that was going to be the case, they were going to be able to just let it sneak by and just say, yep, it's all good. But when they were put in the hot seat, they, saved their own butts and said, nope, that's not what it's meant for. So I'm not surprised. It was literally what the pardon was.
Yeah, that's how I read it too. And I predicted, and I think I was remarkably accurate at this. I think what happened was you started to see, because of sort of alternative media, plus then serendipitously at the same time, you had these whistleblowers, Shapley and Ziegler from the IRS, that started to contact people in the Republican Party explaining, like, look, there's more to this than meets the eye. We're seeing connections between Biden and his brother and his son and all these shell companies, etc. I think all of that led to sort of, it made it difficult for the prosecutors to do nothing. Because I think the original plan was just do nothing. And so they appoint this special counsel, and they're like, yeah, and I predicted that inevitably what would happen would be that both before that initial plea deal and then even after it, I said, the charge they won't bring is the barking dog. They ain't going to bring that far a charge. Right? Because the problem politically is if he gets charged with failing to register as a foreign lobbyist, what normies will ask is, well, who was he lobbying to? Yes. And then all of a sudden it's like, now you're implicating not just Joe Biden, but a bunch of people in our political class. Like you said, it could be Romney, it could be Kerry, people on the Republican and Democrat side, and they didn't want that. So I think what happened was they actually did bring, which I thought was sort of the least important charge, this gun charge and a couple of tax charges. And I actually think, ironically, there is a point to be made of maybe that gun charge is never brought. if it's not Hunter Biden. But the only reason that it got to that point was because he is Hunter Biden. And they were covering up for the more serious crimes, or at least the crimes that were more serious when it came to implicating people in the political world. I mean, do you think that... So I said early and often, I was like, they could bring those FARA charges. There is no chance they bring those before the 2024 election, because that's going to look real bad. It's the same reason that they decried the Hunter Biden laptop before the 2020 election. The entire attack against Trump's like, he's this unhinged maniac that's trying to make money off of horrible foreign groups and trying to get dirt on his opponents. And so when you found out that, I think that's what Trump thought going into 2020, he's like, oh, that's my opponent did exactly what they accused me of. Look at that. And then it got buried. So they weren't going to leave that story come up again in 2024 if it was up to them. That's how I read it, why they never brought FARA charges, even though it was blatant as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, well, and yes, it does lead to, the FARA, the FCPA thing. They're like, oh, so, because Hunter's an idiot. Hunter is Fredo when it comes to things. Bo was probably like Sonny. He was probably the better son before he got, I don't know, depending on Joe when you ask, he died attacking the Death Star or whatever it is he says that happens depending on the day of the week to him. But then he's left with, I guess I got to rely on my crackhead idiot son to go collect the money. So Hunter was the bag man. And yes, then it becomes an issue of, well, who was he the bag man for? And it's not only that, but it's people like Biden's brother who, did a lot of built housing in Iraq and hundreds of millions of dollars in real estate deals. And there's a lot of people involved in this. And, that 10% of the big guy, there's a lot of palms that got greased. So yes, that does create an issue of where do we go with it? What do we look at? Now, when it comes to the gun stuff, normally would anybody else be charged with that? No, not usually. That doesn't mean it's not unusual. I mean, after all, it is a law. And I thought we were like, nobody's above the law. And if we're breaking laws, we're breaking laws. And yes, normally people who get charged with that law are not white guys who went to Yale Law and named Hunter. They're usually poor people and minorities because that's what gun laws are used for. Gun laws are never used look in your state look in a county somewhere on a docket. Who's been charged of carrying a concealed weapon or illegally carrying a firearm in a vehicle? Whatever it is, any type of weapons offense. It's usually not white people. So, but yes, if it wasn't Hunter, would this have been different? Possibly, but it's not like it's never happens. And do I think ultimately at the end of the day it's an unconstitutional charge? Sure. But I also believe if we're going to do equal application of law, okay, well, we're going to equally apply it. Now, was I hoping this got to a court of appeals and Hunter Biden set some good case law? Sure. That I think that there would have been a lot for that, but I do think it was hilarious watching people on the left explain, arguing for abolishing part of the Gun Control Act, that I'm like, welcome aboard.
Right. That is.
So,
there was irony in that. It's so true. It's the same. My stance has always been on all of this stuff. There are tons of laws I don't like, right? I tend to be libertarian adjacent. So there's a lot of laws when it comes to the Second Amendment. There's even questions going way back to the original Russia collusion hoax. Should it be a crime to try to get dirt on your political opponent from hostile foreign actors? I don't think so. I don't think that should be a crime. I might say that's unethical. I don't like it, but I don't think it should be a crime. If the government, if some Russian Kremlin agent says, hey, we have photos of, Donald Trump selling us nuclear secrets, I think that's fair game for the other side to say, sure. Now, if they're trading political favors, that's different. But just getting that dirt. So you had this initial accusation of Don Jr. at Trump Tower, talks to this alleged Russian lawyer, Veselnitskaya.
Yeah, the whole Maginski Act thing.
Right. Yeah, over the Maginski Act and all that.
Then there was the Alpha Bank servers.
Right. So,
yes, there was another and another.
My point was always this. I don't think that should be a crime. I don't think that Don Jr. because how the hell do we even know what he would have done? Maybe Veselnitskaya says, here's evidence of Hillary Clinton's crimes, and he immediately calls the FBI and says, my God, this Russian lawyer just gave me evidence of crimes. Well, we're not going to use this politically, but my ultimate point was this. If you're going to say that needs to be investigated as a crime, well, we know Hillary's team was dealing with a suspected Russian spy named Igor Dushenko. Why aren't they investigated? Why isn't that a crime?
Even more importantly, they always like to talk about the P tape. You mean the thing that came from Russia?
Right.
That's a little sus. Like and it's funny when they try to figure out. Well, that's different. It's like, okay, well, yes, I'm sure it's different.
And that to me though, it's like all of these
Yeah.
cases. Like I'll give you another one. Do I think that we have all sorts of problems with whether it be foreign countries, foreign corporations, foreign businesses, or even domestic businesses getting involved in politics? Sure, I think there's a huge problem with that. So in theory, I don't have a problem with trying to crack down on that. I have a question on how we should go about it legally. But
Yes.
if the argument is we're going to start prosecuting people under the FARA Act, like Paul Manafort, I might disagree with that, but what's more of a problem is the selective application. So it's like,
Yes.
fine, if Manafort's going to go down for that, no problem. That means they're one of the worst kept secrets in Washington is that everybody's lobbying for some foreign group.
Yeah.
So throw
If-
thousands of people
yeah.
in jail. Let's do it. But
Yes.
they won't do that.
And
It's
that's-
only people connected to Trump.
Yeah, and the idea of, and people remember like Tony Podesta, John Podesta's brother, filed a bunch of late FARA Act notices and did retroactive. That happens all the time. But yes, people violate FARA left and right. I'm also not going to lie. If any of the NAFO bros are out there watching, if you, a lot of the people you like and follow on YouTube and Twitter, I think a lot of people have violated FARA by shilling for salami ukulele land. And I'm sure a lot of people have violated FARA for shilling for the Russian government. I mean, they're like both ways, but yeah, like that's a big one out there. And I guarantee you people have.
And so that's the issue.
And I'm not joking. That comes down to people like me and you.
Right.
If I have these YouTube channels where people like they're doing things or in conjunction with, like, you see like we're doing this and that, and I'm like, it sounds like you got paid. And if you got paid to influence the politics on behalf of the political scene on behalf of a foreign government, that's a FARA issue. It doesn't matter that you're some Yahoo sitting in your room on the computer. That's a FARA thing.
Yeah, and that's my point was they sort of look when you sort of cracked the glass on that with Trump. Oh, we have this thinnest of cases, but technically the bar for the FBI opening an investigation is very low. And so we're going to start investigating everyone connected to Trump, and we're just going to throw the book at them for anything. Oh, we got Manafort for FARA in 2013. And the indicting document from Mueller's team says he worked with Group A and Group B. Group A is a Republican lobbying firm called Mercury LLC. Group B is the Podesta Group, which is ran by Tony Podesta and was formed by John Podesta, who's Hillary's campaign manager. It literally says that Manafort committed this crime with Group A and Group B. So this is as apples to apples as it gets. And they were allowed to retroactively file paperwork. So to me, it's like, okay, once you crack the glass on that, why shouldn't Hunter Biden be charged for FARA? Why shouldn't all of these? And the truth is, I had this, like, I'll tell you a brief anecdote here. I one time got arrested. The only time I've spent time in jail. Right, I was at a metal concert. I was at a metal concert, and there was a big brawl, and I was hammered. I wasn't involved in the brawl, but the cops had no sense of humor after that. Once they arrested 6-7 people for fighting,
they tend not to.
Right, so I go up to get a beer, and it was like some ridiculous, like $8 for a PBR or something. And the bartender cracks it, slides it, and before I grab it, I pay the money. The bouncer grabs it and goes, "You're shut off." And I was like, "Well, I want my money back. I didn't even get to touch the beer." Like, you can't sell it to me and then say I can't have it. Yeah. And the the bouncer means arguing. Next thing I know, I get slammed on the ground, handcuffed. My nose is bleeding. It's a cop, throws me in the drunk tank. I get put in the drunk tank. I had to wait there. Dude was a total dick. Then I talked to the officer that's into the drunk tank, a second one. He's cool as shit. At the end of the day, all the charges were dropped because I fought it in front of the judge, and the second cop came and spoke on my behalf and said it was all misunderstanding, so the charges were all dropped. But he explained that I was charged. I was like, "What are the charges?" He's like, "Drunken public and disorderly conduct." And I was like, "Well, I didn't commit disorderly conduct." He's like, "Yeah, you did." And he brings up the PA statute of disorderly conduct, and it is so broad. It's like basically something like anything that could be construed as an annoyance to any member of the public. He's like, you're talking too loud, disorderly conduct. You're playing music that other people could hear, disorderly conduct. And he's like, look, we intentionally, as police officers, we like the law written this way because if we think that you committed some crime and we can't prove it, well, at least we could pull you over and charge you with disorderly. That's sort of the catch-all.
Yeah, it's the obstructing. It's a contempt of cop charge. But yeah, here in Ohio, it's recklessly causing inconvenience, annoyance, or alarm.
That's everything. That's my whole life. Like
Yes, by doing multiple things.
my mere existence walking down the street probably meets the criteria for. So when you see things that are that broad, right? And when our obviously the most powerful law enforcement agency, the FBI, like if they have the ability to selectively go after the people that they don't like and to protect the ones they don't, that's more of a threat than anything Russia could do interfering or China.
Oh, it is. It is.
And I don't understand. To me, it's like it's never been about, well, we need to take down Trump or we need to take down Hillary or we need to take down Biden. I look at this and I'm like, my God, if the FBI is actively putting their thumb on the scale of who's going to be president or who's going to be senator or what policies are we going to do, we're in a lot of trouble as a country. And it seems that partisan politics has gotten into the way where it's just like, well, if we like Trump, then he could do no wrong. And if we hate Trump, then whatever, let the FBI go hog wild. And to me, I think that's why I see so much gnashing of the teeth from all of these establishment Democrats that hate Trump with people like Kash Patel coming in. It's not that they think Patel's like legal background isn't qualified. It's that they're worried that he'll expose the skeletons.
Well, yeah, that's the problem. He's not just saying he's going to collect scalps. He's sitting there sharpening a knife. And he wants his scalps. I want me 100 globalist scalps. And I will get my scalps. And yeah, Kash Patel is going to do it. And I'm fine with that. But yes, now they're finally just realizing like, oh, wait, they're not like, we're not doing this. Oh, we're going to try to be nice anymore. Like, no, the game's over. Like, we're done with that. It's, like, we're coming for you. And yeah, it sucks. But you know what? We didn't start this. We've reacted to it. And now we're here. And now we're dealing with it.
Unfortunately, it's not going to change unless there's some sort of legal repercussions, because even after the whole Crossfire Hurricane Russia collusion debacle, well, what happened? There was like, even the weak IG came out and was like, well, there's cultural problems. The Durham report comes out and shows
cultural problems.
And so the FBI is like, okay, we'll take care of it in-house. We'll take care. We assure you this sort of stuff won't happen again. And then that's it. Until there's some sort of like legal ramifications for the people involved, they're just going to say, we promise we won't do it. And then they're going to do it as soon as they get the chance again, as soon as the microscope's not under them. And I don't think it's
that's the problem.
Yeah, go ahead.
If you let off of them, you've got them where you want them. As soon as you let off of them, they're not just going to go, oh, it's okay. They're going to stay low and lay low until they get the chance again.
Yeah. It's to me, it's just, that's what... To me, that's what the whole Burisma, and this is what every time I've debated lawyers or people like Destiny or whatever on the left, this is what they don't understand about me. They're like, well, you'll say whatever you can to protect Trump. I really don't give a shit. In fact, for me personally, if Trump goes to prison, things actually probably would be better for me. My channel would probably take off. There'd be a lot of people pissed off, some more people watching me.
Yeah.
We probably would have ended up with someone like J.D. Vance or Ron DeSantis that maybe would have had an axe to grind even more and been less off the cuff. And like, for me, it was never about that. If Trump committed crimes, okay, as long as he's being held to the same standard and it's not political, fine, charge him, right? The problem I've always had is this double standard and unequal application and how blatant it's becoming. And it seems like half the country's like, well, I don't care. I really hate that orange man. So it's okay if I don't know how much more blatant it could get. And now, when the shoe's on the other foot, all of these people, some of which are smart, like someone like Pisco's smart, right? You listen to him and he'll say, well, the predicate for opening an FBI investigation is actually very low. And the Democrats cited that over and over from the IG report.
Yeah.
Well, let's,
it's a regular police investigation. What does it take for them to do it? We're going to do it.
An accusation. Like, literally, there could be an accusation like, well, we heard Joe Biden possibly selling nuclear secrets to China. It doesn't matter how flimsy that is. An investigation based on that claim could start. The problem is, what are the tools you use in the course of that investigation? Which is, of course, what Durham said. Yeah, okay, you were okay to start an investigation into Russia collusion. You weren't okay to get FISA warrants. You weren't okay to send, spies to people like Carter Page or George Papadopoulos. But now that the shoe's on the other foot,
what happened to that guy?
Right. What I say to people now is the people on the left that said, oh, well, the predicate was okay. It's like, okay, well, the predicate's so low. Let's investigate Nancy Pelosi. Let's investigate Joe Biden. Let's investigate Chris Wray.
Where did her driver go? Oh, it turns out he was a CCP spy. Or that was Dianne Feinstein, sorry.
Yeah, right.
CCP spy. And it's like, Where's all the money go? Why do you guys have some like what else happening here? I mean, yes, they've established it. It's very much like the Democrats do this. You know, Harry Reid did the nuclear option, getting rid of the like you don't need a filibuster anymore. Like you just need 50 votes to get cloture. Okay, great, we did that, and then look what happens. We start ramming stuff through. Wait, no, it's like okay, like you play games and you get mad when like we learn from you. This is apparently how we're doing it now.
Do you think, given all of this, that there's
Mm-hmm.
likely to be more pardons from Joe
Yeah, oh
Biden?
yes. Well, the Biden family's all catching pardons. His brother's
That's
getting
what
a
I thought.
pardon. Everybody's getting pardoned.
Granddaughter, yep. Ashley's gonna
Yeah.
get one, yep.
Well, I don't know what she would need one for. She was the one getting molested in the shower.
Well, not Ash. Which the one? Is it a granddaughter, a niece? The one that also had bank accounts that was
Oh
connected to
yeah.
James Biden and to Hunter.
Yeah, you know who won't get one? His like the estranged granddaughter in Arkansas. Joe Biden probably won't help her. He doesn't like her.
Yeah, but yeah, she's not getting right
Yes.
to the stripper lady,
but-
right? But what
Yeah,
do you think?
which-
There's a chance that you see people like in whether it be in the executive branch, like Chris Wray,
Yes.
people like that, and do you
Mm-hmm.
think that you could see I guess Adam Schiff, Nancy
Mm-hmm.
Pelosi, those type of people? Do you think we'll see?
I can
pardons
see
like
that. Yep, and I really hope to God Liz Cheney gets hung out to dry, because I just, at the end of the day, people are like, oh, Liz Cheney's so brave. It's like, you guys remember like 20 years ago, she was Hitler,
Yep.
like literally, and her dad was Hitler. And people don't seem to remember Liz Cheney was a deputy assistant secretary of state who was on TV pushing the Iraq war, pushing for all this stuff. She was involved with the Iraqi National Congress. Like all like that was a whole, if you guys ever want to read about something that was a complete disaster and a money laundering operation, oh boy. But yes, she's as big a scumbag as all of them. But I hope she gets hung out to dry on that and we find out what's happened. But yeah, they're going to be, the auto pen's going to catch fire, right, and signing Biden's name for all those pardons.
Yeah, I agree, and
I can tell you that.
I hope that Kash Patel, Pam Bondi, I
Mm.
hope that they aggressively go after people. I don't want them to make up crimes, but I hope they use the same standard, not the illegal FISA warrants, but other than that, the same standard that was used against Trump and his people. Because what I've long said is, like, listen, I'm not going to go to bat for any character of Donald Trump, character witness for Donald Trump, or for that matter, pretty much any other politician. My assumption is anyone who's a billionaire or anyone who's at the highest level of national politics, there's probably an 85 to 90% chance that they've broken some sort of law that's of a serious nature, whether it be a campaign finance law, some sort of financial law, things like that. And so if we're going to have an FBI that says, there's our person, now let's find the crime, it's just like cancel culture. It's not going to end until the people that are happy with that power being abused for their side face the consequences of it. So maybe if we open an investigation into Nancy Pelosi for insider trading and we don't find that, but oh look, we found back in 2014 she had these other, she committed some sort of tax evasion because she didn't file out her tax. Like once that sort of stuff happens and people are like, well, this is a witch hunt, Trump's team, Trump's DOJ, and it's like, this is exactly what you all did.
This is what you wanted.
This is the world you wanted. And I'm still shocked that this was all they were able to find on Trump. Like, it's so flimsy.
And that's the thing. Like, okay, you might say a lot of things about Trump, but apparently he is either the best criminal in the world or he toes the line and just happens to be not the nicest guy in his personal life and his relationships. And you know what? That's fine. I'm not voting for the Pope. I voted for this man to act like a J-Dam going into the government. Because that's not a bad idea.
On a tangential subject, this is probably the most frequent thing that people on the left want to debate me on. And it'll be interesting to hear your perspective on this. I think that the left, particularly people like Destiny, they realize they're fighting an uphill battle with Trump guilty of shit on January 6th. We're going to find more and more evidence of sort of the FBI involvement in that. I assure you that's coming.
It's not just FBI, but it's like
it's going to be like 13 agencies is what you're going to find.
it's federal law enforcement. You're going to find like Army intelligence, Army counterintelligence, because we're on we're in federal territory. You're going to find military counterintelligence assets involved with this. Naval intelligence going to be involved. You're going to have like, all kinds of agencies people have probably not heard of having people deployed. You're going to have probably the DIA had people involved in this. All kinds of glowies. It's going to look like the set of Chernobyl.
Yeah, it's
Once you realize
so
how
they've
it's mapped out.
realized like that's not the way. So what they've done is cleverly they sort of pivot, but they bring up January 6th and they talk about the alternate electors, and that's the real damning point. So I haven't talked to you about this. I have my opinions on why I wasn't a fan of the alternate electors, but I didn't think it was a crime. Where's your stance on? Did Trump commit a crime? Did the electors commit a crime? What's your take on that? I assume you know what I'm talking about.
So here's where it comes down to. There's going to be like some of these were people who I think were kind of jerked around by, I'm like people like Sidney Powell and some people. They are running some of these organizations and being in charge of certain groups. Were getting people to sign things, and I don't think they understood what the hell they were getting into. But I do think there are some people who did this, and they understood where they were. They knew they were falsely signing documents, which I do think is going to hurt some people. Like in the Trump case, there still is where he signed a false document. Like they went after for knowingly signing a false document. Like that was going to be one of the stronger points. But it looks like that got taken away from them because the court's like, well, that's technically a federal court issue now. But like there are some things where they probably were going to get people on. But yeah, with most of these alternate elector issues, I think it sucks for like people in Michigan. They're kind of SOL because the AG there's a lunatic, and then Greasy Gretchen's in charge, and as the oil drips off her forehead, they're not going to get anything from her. But I think there's other states where like they might have a chance. Like in Arizona, there's a couple people who got brought up on things. We'll find out if they can get out of it. But yeah, I think there's going to be some people who knew what the hell they were doing. They knew it was kind of bullshit. But I think a lot of people were probably just being told like they weren't probably fully being apprised of what they're doing. But I think some of them, like I can't admit, like not everybody's in like, oh gosh, I didn't know what was going on. I think there's some people who probably are going to get boned out of that.
The idea of falsely, I actually saw Nick Rahita talk about this, right, where he said that in order for the fraud, for a charge of fraud, it would have to be that the lie was impactful. For example, I could lie in a document, I'm the greatest home run hitter that's ever existed, vote for me. That's not a crime, even though it's a blatant lie, even if I sign my name and swear to it. So the signing of the alternate electors...
But the issue then becomes though very quickly that was used like because it becomes an issue of fraud. You're attempting to entice something to happen with that document. So the fact it doesn't succeed and nobody believes you, like I could forge a document and I go to the courthouse and like I could forge a deed saying you sold me land, and I go to the courthouse and record it, and the lady's like, yeah, I don't buy that. Did I commit fraud or did I commit forgery? Oh, you bet I did. So the fact that it was intended to have an impact, it just didn't work. It was an unsuccessful attempt. Being unsuccessful doesn't
it's
negate
not whether or not it was successful in the grand scheme of thing. I believe the argument would be this, that the person that's getting it, whether it be people in Congress or the vice president, is going to know who the electors were that were voted for. And so when someone says, I certified that I'm the duly elector, he knows that they weren't, and that they're making sort of a political grandstanding point as a placeholder saying, we think that the process was corrupt and therefore...
I understand what you're saying there, but still that becomes at the end of the day, if your idea of making a statement is offering a fraudulent document, you have to be careful because, normally people offer fraudulent documents. It's normally to gain a fraudulent benefit. Now, I think that is probably for some of what that was intended to be, was people were signing it for the theatrical part of it, just like you see when these guys on January 6th coming up, they're going to act like idiots. They're going to act like morons. But we all understand it's theatrical. They're not like... You're like, oh, Trump can't take power. Like, okay, yeah, but they understand he's going to. It's all it's their theatrical part for their side of the aisle. But I just think there's ways joke's on you, I was only pretending to commit a crime, or like there's better ways to do things. If you want to protest something, where you don't have to look like you're going astray of committing a crime.
Mhm.
That's kind of where we run into that territory of like, joke's on you. I was only pretending to, I was only pretending to commit forgery. It's like, well, there's better ways you could have done it.
Yeah,
I
I mean,
guess.
I ultimately think I don't think it was a good strategy. I don't like it at all. I would have been absolutely livid, particularly if I'm a lefty, and Pence would have been like, "Yeah, we're
Yeah.
going with the alternate. We're sending it back to the states."
Yeah.
I would be furious if that happened in the opposite way, and I always try to look at things through that lens.
Mhm.
I do think that these people, probably the majority of them that signed, like you said, like the actual electors that signed it, I think that they probably just have no fucking clue, and I feel bad for them. But I get what you're saying. I really do.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I think the lesson learned here is, unfortunately, because of the two-tier system we have, the truth is just that they will look for a reason to bring the hammer down on people that are
Yes.
from dissonant people. So you have to be more careful. I told people this in the immediacy after January 6th, because people are calling into my show, I'm condemning all political violence on the right or left. I'm telling people like January 8th, I think this is going to massively be blown out of proportion. I think that there were probably people that were agitating, that were state actors and they're agitating. But no doubt there were people that legitimately engaged in acts of violence, and they are going to get punished for it. And to some, maybe they'll be over punished, but they deserve to be punished. You don't get to just punch cops in the face. You don't. And I'm telling people are like, but we have to refresh the tree of liberty with the blood of tyranny here and there. And I'm like, look, even if I can't sell this to you morally, understand you're going to throw your life away. The feds are going to find an excuse to throw your ass in jail.
I mean, if you're going to be about that action, then you might as well go the full measure. Not just, I'm going to get into a fist fight,
right?
Like, I'm not saying I'm not advocating for violence, but I'm just saying, chat, like, there is no like. If you're gonna get pregnant, there's no halfway getting pregnant.
Yeah.
You're either doing it or not.
And
so
the problem is, when you say this to people, though, this is what they say. But we just watched the left riot over and over.
Yeah.
We watched in 2016, they riot when Trump, and I'm like, yes, you're right. It's not fair. But I'm just trying to tell you, person to person, fairness doesn't matter when you're sitting in solitary confinement. You might say, but that's bullshit. This guy didn't get charged. Yeah, but just don't give them the excuse to charge you in the first place.
No, but in defense of that, I do agree that like people were basically, a building behind the White House starts catching fire and people are, attacking the White House, and we would have heard about the, Olympus is under siege if Biden was there.
Yep.
We would have heard all of that, and if you guys don't know where Olympus is, the code name for the White House. I know you probably know that. Well, yeah, there's the movie too, but yes, that's the name for it. But yes, had that happened under Biden's watch, or God Almighty, Obama's, it'd have been like it was a lynch mob coming for Obama. Oh no! Yeah, you know what? Yes, we got to see that it happened, and as you said, it's right. Yes, do not trust your welfare into the benevolence of government officials. Because, yes, they might say, oh, we agree, you're just letting your anger out. Or they might say, no, we're going to just crush you and throw you in jail. Well,
yeah, I mean,
like I said, I think a lot of that was orchestrated, but we'll find out coming out.
Yeah, I totally agree. So my advice to people is always like, either be extremely careful. And I tell people this too. I think that, and this might be paranoid of me, but anytime you're talking about stuff like that, in a internet forum with anonymous people, you should always assume there's someone there either from the feds or that would be willing to report you to the feds. So don't say shit that if you truly believe that this system is two-tiered and is corrupt as people like me say, and the people in my audience seem to agree, then understand that won't prevent them from coming after you. And if you give them a reason, they will. They'll come after you and they'll plaster your name and say, do you see how extreme? And yes, I told the left, you can go back and watch my content going into 2020. Panel after panel I was on talking to all these lefties saying, do you understand that your refusal to condemn or your condoning of the Black Lives Matter, the George Floyd violence, all but makes it inevitable that there'll be right-wing violence? Because inevitably the other side's going to say, oh, these are the new rules. These are the new rules of engagement. And I said, and when that happens, the right's going to be cracked down on in ways that you can't even imagine, and you people are going to scream and gnash your teeth and go, oh my God, look how violent they are, which is exactly what happened. That's, by any objective measure, the riots of George... I even had this big discussion with Destiny, like 5 days after the George Floyd riots were kicking off. And he makes the claim that rioting's the other side of the coin to voting, and that, the language of the unheard and blah, blah, blah. He does make the caveat that he doesn't think it's good to attack private property. But if you have a beef with the state,
That's what happens though in riots.
well, that's right. But he's like, if so burning down the police station is one thing, but looting the private company, that's another. But by that measure, January 6th is far less severe than the Black Lives Matter riots, right? Because January 6th, the only buildings that got affected were public, right? There were no private
only buildings that got affected were public, and we got to watch a bunch of elected officials wear those stupid shake and bake bags on their heads.
Nice, right? It's so I mean
that was, and I think for a lot of the government, that was the thing that pissed them off the most is they were like, there's videos of them, pictures of some of these people with the little oven bags on their heads looking like complete dopes. And then they're all hiding down low, and it's like, Jason Crow, and he's like, I'm the Army Ranger, I'm in Afghanistan. And he's just like, oh my God, they're here. It's like,
what blew my mind as well is like, no one understood the moment. Like, look, there's what's right and there's what's wrong. But then there's also what's good for you politically. No one took the moment politically to be a boss. Like, can you imagine some Democrat going out there and being like, F you, just standing on the stair, and like Secret Service having to grab them and say, you can't be here? That would have been their ad for, like, any Democrat that did that would instantly be one of the front runners for the Democratic primary, because they'd be like, I told the mob that day, so optically, and it just continues to amaze me. Like, best feeling I have for the country is there's retribution, that we start to see the same tactics that's been employed legally, though. I'm not suggesting illegal fines and warrants. I'm suggesting anytime there's serious accusations of crime, like Nancy Pelosi insider trading, immediately start an investigation. Yeah. And hey, if it uncovers stones related to other crimes, that's good. We've learned that's okay. It's fine to do that. Like, that's what I'm suggesting. Hopefully then after that, cooler heads prevail, and it's like,
oh, I don't think it's probably not going to prevail. We're sorry.
No, it'll get way worse before it gets better.
We're not taking our foot off the gas.
Well, we shouldn't. I mean, there should be retribution until they cry out.
Well, no. I don't think you can go back to it, because now you're trusting one side to let up.
Right.
And that other side is demonstrated as soon as you let up all they're doing, they go back to sharpening their knives. So it's like, sorry, we're just going to keep at it. And, you guys wanted to play full contact. All right, we're playing full contact from here on out.
What do you think about the developments, allegedly? I haven't heard a statement from Christopher Wray, but it seems as if he's resigning. What are your initial thoughts on that?
I just, God, these FBI, the FBI just ain't got no fight in them. You're not going to stick around and make Trump fire you. Be about it, man. Don't just, run away.
Is there a potential legal strategy to Wray, in that, I don't know if this is true, I've heard this, that if he's no longer FBI director, then he doesn't have to be as forthcoming if he's questioned by Congress? He could, plead the fifth, or just...
Well, there's certain things he could do anyway. I mean, there might be some legal strategy into that. But here's the deal. I mean, if he gets to, the beginning of the term for the new Congress, Trump's not going to keep him anyway. So I don't think that helps too much, because they'll get documents and information, and oh, I'm going to plead the fifth. Okay, you know how I get around that? You have immunity now. Tell me, or you go to jail. So just like with Hunter is immune from prosecution, but if he does, they could say fine, but Hunter no longer has a Fifth Amendment right at that point.
But isn't he just going to say I was a crackhead? I don't remember.
Well, he can if he wants to, and if he wants to come, and that's the thing. If you want to come in front of the country and say, I'm a big old crack smoking retard, and I did anything for Iraq. Then fine. Yeah, if you want to be known that way, Hunter, then yeah, go for it. I don't think he's gonna want to be known that way.
Yeah.
So
I know that
it takes a lot to want to go in front of the world and say, sorry, I'm just a big moron.
So I know you mentioned, we were talking about possible topics. You mentioned sort of, we're finding out some of the funding that's coming from Ukraine going to some of the noble rebels.
Not just funding.
Training.
They sent they sent drone teams down, and they sent 200 hunter killer FPV drones, and now the footage has been spilling out of FPV drones chasing Syrian tanks and equipment. It's
yeah, it's really crazy. I was wondering, to get your thoughts on this. I'm tired of when these sorts of situations occur, whether it be the Maidan revolution in Ukraine, or the noble revolutionaries in Libya. Oh, that ended up taking over, and now we have open air slave markets in Libya.
Yes.
Or
that Arab Spring was a banger.
Those great Mujahideen fighters that were noble that then became Al Qaeda and the Taliban. I'm so tired of when situations like this occur within Syria that we're always told like US had nothing to do with it. It's totally organic.
Mm-hmm.
All of this fighting force that was outnumbered 5-1, that was facing a professional military backed by Russia, they just overnight overpowered them, and that's just the way it is. And the United States didn't have anything to do with it. And now we're going to send money and bombs afterwards. But yay! Like, what's your take on that? Does it not seem obvious to you that the U.S. and the West is involved in sort of these revolutionaries?
Well, we always are. We're always involved in everything. It goes all the way back. We you know, it's kind of like, do you guys I don't know if you remember the Simpsons episode where they talk about like killing all the snakes they have to deal with, and they're like, don't worry, we'll bring in this animal that eats all those, and then there's a gorilla that comes in and kills off that thing, and they're like, what? Who kills that? And then the guy's like, don't worry, the frost will kill them because it gets too cold. It's like, yes, we keep on having to like kill this thing and kill this thing and kill this thing. Like we destabilized Iraq, and now we have Al Qaeda in Syria. Now we have ISIS, and we're like, oh. And then it turns out like, oh, in the meantime, we were giving guns to, Timber Sycamore, Google it. We were sending guns to Syria through Libya, and it's like,
it's always
no,
it's always the same story. Then that'll be the excuse for why we have to perpetually be there 20 years from now. Well, we funded this group. Sorry, now we have to be there.
Yeah, and then the guy who leads Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, HTS, he cut his teeth when he was 20 years old working for al-Zarqawi in Iraq, and then he quit al-Zarqawi and started al-Nusra, Al-Qaeda in Syria. And, Zarqawi's writing him letters saying, Habibi, brother, come back to me. And he's like, nah, fam, I don't want to do that. And he does his own thing. And then after a while, he ends up becoming bros with al-Baghdadi. The guy who started, ISIS and became part of ISIL. And then after a while, he's like, sorry, Baghdadi, I don't want to do that anymore. I want to do my own thing. And he started his own group. And now, Abu Muhammad al-Jilani has a $10 million bounty on his head.
Yeah, I was going to bring it up. Yep.
He still has he's had a $10 million bounty on his head for over 10 years, Chad.
The State Department still has a tweet up about it.
He is a specially designated global terrorist. Like he's a team of terrorism. He's the A team of terrorism. And his organization has been a designated terror group for almost as long. But yeah, we do this all the time. And yes, and then you wonder, how did those Ukrainians all of a sudden show up outside of Turkey in Idlib province? How did they get there? Well, it's right next to Turkey. And you're like, well, wait. And now we're learning that the Turks were funding HTS. And it's like, NATO allies doing that. And we're like, oh, that's cool. And, we funded money and gave money to Ukraine, who then sent their guys to go help a terrorist organization, which is warmed over Al-Qaeda. And yeah, I'm sure that they're saying right now, oh, yeah, we believe in women's rights and everything. And I'm like, the Taliban said that too. And last I checked, it's not like good over there. And, the last time, forgive me for not trusting, not just Islamic terrorism, but Salafist Takfiris. Yeah. Like I don't know. Do you know what the Salafists are? They believe that the strict Sunni is a strict Sunni adherence, and then the Takfiris, the ones who are like, we're gonna kill everybody to make it happen. So it's not even guys just regular Islamic terrorism, but they're Salafist Takfiris. Like these guys, yes, these guys are worse than the Taliban, and the Taliban's bad.
It's
now, yeah.
And again, we're sending all of these weapons to Ukraine, who's now sending them
and money,
right? Money
and training,
right? Money, training, weapons to Ukraine, who's now sending them to Islamic terrorists that are overthrowing Syria. Now, it owned Putin.
It owned Putin.
Right?
So who cares if you're helping unleash a terrorist state on the world? But hey, Putin looks bad. Like that's all that matters.
And the dominoes that fall from this it's always incredible.
Oh yeah.
Right? Like never leave a good crisis go to waste. The authoritarians in our country will always use this to consolidate more power. So one of my favorite stories is I can never pronounce his first name, but Mika Brzezinski's dad. What's his real name? Like Zbigniew?
Zbigniew Brzezinski.
Zbigniew, yes. He writes this book, The Grand Chessboard, and he gets interviewed in like '97. I saw this interview of him, and they're like, for those that don't know. This is how, because I'm just a redneck. I'm not some foreign policy expert, but I do look into this a little, and so let me explain this to you in the simplest ways I can, right? Hey, all of my like rural Pennsylvania, rural people out there, you know those Rambo movies? Great movies. Do you ever watch Rambo 3? Now, the plot of Rambo 3 is he has to go to Afghanistan to save the guy that trained him, Troutman, because Troutman was working with these noble Afghani farmers, right, to fight off the Russians. And there's this scene when Rambo finally gets there and he's talking to this man in a turban. I love the actor that's playing him. And the guy's explaining, he's like, for years, people tried to invade Afghanistan and never can. And we are noble people. And that's the Mujahideen. Those are the people that we funded in the 70s to launch terror attacks in the Soviet Union. And then we denied it. And we were like, no. Not we. The United States Intel agents, they're like, we're not doing that. And so then once Russia's like, yeah, you are. And then once the Soviet Union collapses, it was an admission. Yeah. And so in the book Grand Chessboard, Brzezinski admits that, yes, we did this. So he's asked in like 97, because at this point it's evident that Al-Qaeda and the Taliban, they're doing some bad shit in Afghanistan. And he's asked in this interview, do you regret this? Do you regret training and arming these people? Because looks like this might be a problem. And he says, well, no, because we gave the Soviets their own Vietnam. And so it was totally worth it. It helped collapse the Soviet Union. We were then told, from that 6-7 years later, that we had to give up our right to privacy and go to war in Afghanistan and then later Iraq. Why? Because those very people that we armed attacked our country, allegedly. And so these dominoes, it always is like a decade later, we need more authoritarian. Now we need to be more involved in the region.
Yeah, and for Brzezinski, I'm sure if you asked him, I'm sure he won't say it honestly, but it's like, okay, so yeah, it was totally worth it. Does that mean 9/11 was worth the fall of the Soviet Union? Because that's like the lines drop. Like as much as I don't like that one guy on TikTok, he's the dude who works for Nike, but he works for he works somewhere out in like Washington, but he works for like some company doing like he does all these like socialist meme videos, but he talks about like the CIA, and he does a pretty good one where it's like, he goes like all the stuff for the CIA.
I know who you're talking about. Yeah, he plays like 20 characters in his
video. They're actually hilarious.
Yeah,
but that one was actually very good because then it shows like Al Qaeda. Then you see the calendar, and he's like, "Oh no!" It's like, I will give him credit though. The Philippines one is actually pretty accurate. But yeah, it's like yes, we want to do this. At what cost? At what cost is this going to be? Because okay, great. Assad was a really bad guy, and he was terrorizing his own people. Okay, so what did we do? We brought in new people. What, are they going to terrorize the Syrians? Oh, no, they're going to send terrorists and, they're going to detonate a suicide vest in Paris. It's like, how is that better? How is that better? Is that, the math I want? No.
Well, to them, they don't care, because that's all part of their agenda anyways.
Well, yes. Well, a bunch of them then get to go, oh, yay, we get to go do interventionism. And it's like, yeah, that was great. That was great.
And so then, again, to break this
also,
down...
another movie that talks about the goodness of the Mujahideen is The Living Daylights.
Yeah.
They fluff them up really bad because that was the end of the Soviet invasion.
Yeah. I forgot about that one. Was that Timothy Dalton?
Yep.
Yeah. The good. I love the Bond movies, but the situation in Syria even before this, I thought I'm someone who I've talked to many a time who's very much interested in the region is Dylan Burns, who spent time in Ukraine.
Yeah.
Before Russia invaded Ukraine, I had this conversation with him about Syria, and I explained this to him. I was like, okay, so supposedly the United States is in Syria to fight ISIS, right? Yes, that's why they're... Okay, so we're there, and then there's ISIS that's like bad guys, but then there's other Islamic terrorists like Al-Nusra and these other Islamic terrorist groups. But they're the good guys. The State Department admitted that they're on our side there. Then you have sort of non-Islamic terrorist people that are fighting against Assad's regime, sort of revolution. Allegedly, that's what we're told.
No, there are some. Most of them got killed because Assad was having problems. So because Syria was a logistical hub for Al Qaeda. If you talk to anybody who did time in Iraq and they were, they spent time on the border, I've talked to guys, they would schwack groups of dudes coming across the Syrian border into Iraq, and they'd ambush them and kill them. And it's because Al Qaeda was, their fighters would equip and train and heal up over the border, and then they would come back and they would ambush the shit out of them. And it happened all the time. So yeah, once the war's over, Assad's like, this isn't good to have a bunch of armed jihadists running around with no war to fight. So he rounds them up, puts them in jail. When the Arab Spring happens and the Syrian army's starting to have some issues, he's like, hey, guys, I'm gonna let you out if you promise to go. Don't go here, go north and cause problems. And yeah, he masterfully destroyed the Free Syrian Army. There are still units and elements of the Free Syrian Army, but most of the rebels that are fighting right now are some flavor of I'll chop your head off with a machete if I get the chance.
Well, then you have the other.
It's just a question of how sharp the machete's going to be.
So then the other group you have is the Kurds, right? Our allies, the Kurds. So we have but this is the story we're told, right? So what we have is Assad's our ally in fighting ISIS, but we also have to attack Assad because he's really bad to his people. And now Al Qaeda and the Kurds and the Free Syrian Army, they're our allies as well. But here's the thing: even when ISIS is wiped out, well, we can't leave. Well, you might say, why? Wasn't the mission there to destroy ISIS? Well, here's why. Because we're also in a military alliance called NATO. And part of that alliance is that we station nuclear weapons in Turkey because they're our ally. And if Turkey's attacked, we're treaty bound to come to their defense and engage in war against who their attackers are. But they also happen to be genocidal maniacs. And so if we leave Syria, they will commit genocide against our ally, the Kurds. So now we have to violate Syria's sovereignty in perpetuity forever, because our allies in NATO's who we've given nuclear weapons to station, Turkey, is trying to commit genocide against our ally in Syria, the Kurds. That's the official narrative. And I talked to Dylan Burns and I said, you're okay. If we're there to fight ISIS, why are we fighting Assad? And he basically, it's like pulling teeth, but he admitted, keep in mind, this is before Russia invaded. He's like, well, if we could thumb our eye and put our thumb in Putin's eye while we're there, who cares? Good anyways, right? I'm like, you sure about that? You sure there's not going to be blowback? You're okay with that? There's not going to be consequences? Oh, no, Russia can't do anything. And now, look where we find ourselves. And I'm shudder to think where we find ourselves in 20 years when it turns out that the Islamic terrorists that we were financially backing end up being just as bad, if not worse than Assad. And we're told, guess what? We got to go back to the region again.
Well, it's going to be less than 20 years. I mean, we're going to... they're going to have to admit, wait, the guys who are in Al-Qaeda and Al-Nusra and then also in ISIS, it turns out they're really horrible human beings? Pikachu FaceTime. But now we're also going to find out, wait, and because here's part of the reason why everything collapsed as quick as it did for Assad. They all agreed not to fight each other for right now. Because they'll fight, all these groups will fight internally, and then all these groups will fight the Kurds. Because they all hate the Kurds.
Right.
Well, guess what? Now it's all over. There's no more Assad. Guess who's left? The jihadists, the Turks, and the Kurds. And guess what's going to happen? The Turks are going to start steamrolling the Kurds because the Kurds aren't going to be able to do anything. The Turkish army is stronger than them. And now are we going to bomb the Turkish army? Are we going to start bombing Turkish proxy militias? Are we, at some point, HTS is going to start fighting the Kurds again. All these groups are going to start fighting the Kurds again. Granted, we're not going to relinquish our control over the oil fields in eastern Syria, so that's not going to happen. But yeah, at some point, it's like, who are we? Where are we going to fight, and how hard are we going to fight at some point? Because the other big problem is nobody likes the Kurds. The Iraqis don't like the Kurds. The Iranians don't like the Kurds, and the Caucasus Mountains, nobody likes the Kurds.
Yeah, and so then what, again, for me, this isn't a conspiracy. You could find it. I forget, it may have been Victoria Nuland. It might have been someone else at the State Department where the internal memo shows they're blatantly saying, yeah, Al-Qaeda's our ally in Syria. And for me, the question always was, as someone who's sort of a civil libertarian, it's like, so you mean to tell me this group's so scary that we had to pass the Patriot Act, that I can't go through an airport without getting filled up? Right? That all of my communications are surveyed in this country because this scary group, Al-Qaeda, is so bad. But we could ally with them when it comes to...
Yeah. If I try to talk to them and join them, you throw me in prison.
But we could say my tax dollars will go to them.
Yes. We armed them for years because they didn't like Bashar al-Assad, and because him and Hafez al-Assad, his dad, had been like broski with the Russians going all the way through the Cold War when he assumed power back in the 60s. So, or late 50s. So yeah, like we're at what point are we just like, yay, we stuck it in Putin's eye, and it's like, wait, we just kind of created like the hellscape we were trying to avoid. And it's like, I just brought that up to people today. I'm like, you're supporting Islamic terrorism now, and like, well, it doesn't matter. It's like, well, actually, it does matter because at least like Assad was staying in Syria. Now, what's gonna happen? Do you think Al Qaeda is just gonna be like, hey, she's gonna be like, no, this is good. I kind of like where we're at right now. No, they're not.
Well, and it's not
And
like
then,
their allies in Afghanistan didn't just receive a bunch of weapons from the United States as well.
well,
You know,
yeah,
with the,
there's that. But the Taliban are relatively minding their own business. But like Al Qaeda's mission is not just to chill out.
right.
They're like they're in the acquisition business.
It's so, and then we're likely to see. Now, listen, I don't know what your feelings are. I'm not going to speak for you. I'll speak for mine. I don't give. I'm going to assume, even though I don't trust our intelligence in the United States for shit,
Yeah.
I just default assume that any world leader's a sack of shit. Like Putin, I have no love for Putin. I have no love for Assad. When I hear stories about, you should hear the deplorable conditions of the prisons in Syria, there's probably a ring of truth to that, if not totally true.
Yeah.
I'm sure the guy sucks. I'm sure there were plenty of people in the country who aren't bad people that were like, screw this guy, I don't want him in power, and if I had a chance, I'd pick up arms against him, but I don't have a chance unless there's other shitty people that are also going to say, join our shitty side, and then we can take... I'm just like, why are we involved in any of this at this point? At this point, it seems like all we do is we build up one strong man or strong group after another that then becomes the next problem that we're told. And it conveniently goes along with exactly what the people in our intel agencies want. They want the perpetual interventionism. They want the continued authoritarian policies back home that justifies sort of their, things like the Patriot Act, things like the surveillance state. It's all beneficial to them. I think the first thing we're likely to see is a new flood of refugees, right? Where are they going to go? Well, we're going to tell our European allies, sorry, got to open those borders again. And then, and this is the irony amongst ironies, I criticize this shit all the time. Then I have all these interventionist lefties that celebrate these shitty policies, and then they say, well, because of the United States decisions, we created all these refugees. So the very people that you vote for and the policies that you want that creates the problem in the first place, you then say, well, because we had handed it, now we have to take these refugees, which is what you wanted in the first place. I mean, it's the never-ending cyclical, we create a problem, the dialectic, we create a problem so we can offer the solution, which causes another problem, which is just fine because it gives us the chance to offer another solution. I really
Patch
hope...
fixing, it's software. We keep preparing we keep on issuing patches. Guess what? We're always in business.
So,
I know, and yeah, I would love nothing more than to see it stick a finger in Russia's eye, but
me too.
if it causes detriment, then it's never a good idea. Like, yeah, Afghanistan sounds great. That was a great thing. Was it really worth causing 9/11, which then caused the global war on terror and the entire desolation we see and destabilization in the Middle East? Was that worth it? I don't think so. Don't think so.
I mean,
and it's,
okay.
we see, I'm sorry, yeah, but we see all these things like, yeah, there's, and I keep telling people, there's bad shit all over the world, man. Like, right now, Darfur is falling apart. In Sudan right now, the Janjaweed, I know they're called the RSF, but they're still the Janjaweed. They're out there murdering and Darfur is getting really bad. What's going on in Burma right now is really bad. Crack open a newspaper. Bad shit abounds, man. Things happen. Like, yeah.
It isn't interesting, right? Like, when a country seems to sort of, that's involved in internal strife, seems to get their ducks in a row, like Bukele there, then all of a sudden he's criticized by the West. Well, you're too harsh. Now, don't get me wrong. You, as a defense attorney, you might not like everything that Bukele is about there, but nonetheless, it seems funny. It's like the U.S. and the Western intel apparatus will selectively choose when they say, well, we need to get involved here because bad shit's occurring, which most of the time they're right. Bad shit is occurring. But as you mentioned, bad shit's occurring all over the place. And then when a country's like, you know what, we're just going to take care of it ourselves. Well, no, you can't do that either. That's not the right way to go about it. Like, do you have any strong feelings on Bukele? And
Bukele?
yeah, he's El Salvador, correct?
I'm sorry.
Am I
Okay,
pronouncing
yeah.
his name wrong? But
No, I don't. I think it might be off. I don't. Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah. Actually, how do you pronounce his name right now? I don't know.
it's Bukele. I think I always pronounce it, but yeah, it was like one
Yeah.
of the murder capitals of the world, and he basically just put his foot down. And now you see, like, I've seen all sorts of press events where you have people from
Yeah.
United States or UK papers that are like, well, the harsh treatment, and he's just like, hey, kiss our ass, basically. No one had a word to say when we were the murder capital of the world. You newspapers weren't here. But now all of a sudden it's like, whoa. I'm just saying that, like, to me, I see, like, it's clear that it's selective application. We'll ally with a country that's involved in genocide. We don't give a shit.
Yeah.
I keep saying we. I need to stop doing that because it's not
Yeah.
we.
So
You know,
yeah. Also, apparently it's Bukele or Bukele.
Okay, there we go. Yeah.
Sorry, so you say
There we go.
Bukele. I'm like
Bukele. This is like some
Bukele. I was like,
Polish
yeah,
guy or something.
yeah, some Italian guy. No, I mean, when you see what's all going down there, I mean, like, apparently it's working. It's, getting rid of crime, but the way it's being done, I'm like, I don't know about that. Like, but I get that's kind of the Central American way of having dictators and guys. Like, he's not really. I mean, he's kind of acting like one. It just happens to be he's democratically elected for now, and like, yeah, he's done some things like Bitcoin and yeah, uber libertarian. But then it's like massive police state, and I'm like, and like, how many of these guys really are MS-13s? And I just the way, like, the theatrical presentations of it, where like that part wigs me out the most, is like the way all this gets presented, like, cinematically, and I'm like,
I mean, I guess to me, what it comes down to, and I
Yeah.
hate to say this as someone who would be appalled if similar policies were offered in the United States, but maybe my mindset would change if, of my extended family, 4 people were murdered through the violence.
Oh, sure, I'm sure.
And I think that, like, the average person there, because I still believe in the mentality, better to let 1,000 guilty people go free than one innocent go to jail. But that's in a society where we're incredibly lucky, even today. Even when you hear these terrible stories of crime increasing in places like San Francisco or something, we're still incredibly lucky when it comes to the history of the world and how bad violent crime's been as the norm.
Yes.
We're incredibly lucky. So it offers us the chance to say, well, look, we want more, I don't know what the word you would use, maybe in that sense liberal, a more liberal law enforcement system where we're not so interested in capital.
System,
But maybe that changes if it's like, the murder rate, something like, out of 100,000 people, it's like 10,000 people die or murdered. But yeah, I agree with you. Like, I only bring it up is just the point. It's just like the selective application to me is just amazing. I'm afraid, call me you're not going to say this, but the people that disagree with me can call me a conspiracy theorist, and you could say that I'm always hating America. That's something it said, or that I love Assad. It's all bullshit. None of that's true. But all I'm saying is, don't be surprised if the situation in Syria 2 years from now looks remarkably similar, if not worse, than the situation in Libya. It's the same sort of shit where Gaddafi, who I also had no love for, is out there doing national press as he's, like, basically in hiding, telling people these aren't organic rebels. These are Islamic terrorists that are being funded by NATO. And they're not going to be, like, great people if they depose me. It's going to get worse. And that's exactly what happened. Now we have open air. We went from one of the best African countries when it came to, like, literacy rates, home ownership. I'm not saying that Gaddafi was a good guy. I'm just saying objectively, things could be worse in Africa. And now all of a sudden we have open air slave markets and so much progress has been lost.
Yes.
And where are the people? Where are all the people that were so, we have to do this for the noble Libyan people? Now they don't give a shit. And by the way, that'll be the story of Ukraine, and that'll be the story of Afghanistan. All of these people that put the flags in their tweets and their social media, and they claim to care. They're not going to give a shit 10 years after it's no longer the course.
There'll be another current thing. There'll be another issue.
Coney 2012, right? Like that.
Yeah, there'll be another. Yeah, Coney 2012 is a great example. Oh God, that takes me back.
We probably have a slightly younger audience. We're old guys, so we remember the Bush years and, like, even go back to 2012.
Well, it's like I joke with it on chat. I'm like, you think you know the internet, but I was raised by it.
It's like, I tell people this is amazing. So I was this Ron Paul, Well, I was a drunk. I'll be so 2002. I graduate high school. I go to the 20 minutes away this little state school called Clarion University. I join the debate team there.
Clarion, yeah.
Yeah, all my friends are lefties in the debate circuit. They're super lefties. But I was this sort of Ron Paul anti-war libertarian. So they were like, well, on the biggest issue, you're cool. Because the big issue was the Iraq War. 2005, 2006, the 2008 election was all about Bush lied, people died, Cheney was a war criminal. And one of the greatest propaganda victories in history is it only took 2 presidents to take the people that I knew that were the most staunch, critical people of our military-industrial complex to turn them into their biggest defenders. Literally, like the people that I was marching on the streets with now will call me and be like, Rob, we still like you, but you've lost your mind. You've changed so much. I'm like, why? Because I don't trust the CIA? Like you used to not? Because I don't want never-ending war in Ukraine?
Yeah, I'm against, I don't like Raytheon.
Right. And it's like now you're on the same side as all of them and you're like, but you've changed. What's changed? What has changed about me? I didn't trust them in 2006. I don't trust them in 2024. I don't understand what's changed. And it's an incredible propaganda victory because the same argument, I tell people this all the time. Like when people say, you're just giving Putin's talking points. I'm like, are you aware that in 2006, if you were like, I don't believe the WMD story in Iraq, people would say, that's just talking points from Saddam Hussein. You're just, those are Iraq. It's the same bullshit argument. And the same people that used to see through it, now all of a sudden, because they don't like Trump and the intel agencies don't like Trump, now it's like, oh, I believe what they say implicitly.
Well, it's also those agencies got captured ideologically, so it's a little more supportive now. But yeah, it's like, but then you get articles from like Ezra Klein. Here's why drone striking Yemeni weddings is actually okay.
Right. It's surreal. And I mean,
here's
and it even trickles down to like, well, now RFK is a big MAGA shill, and how dare he criticize Big Pharma? And you're like, wait, what? Like,
wait. Like, I do think it's a good idea. We should find out how many of these artificial dyes color. As a big fat guy, I'm like. That's actually not a bad idea. And now we hear people going, no, you can't do that. It's bad. It's like.
I was told that the entire medical industry and the entire law enforcement industry in this country was systemically racist. I was told that reliably by most of my Democratic friends for a large portion of my adult life. Now I'm being told you can't bring people in to investigate corruption at these institutions. That's so damaging to America. But you said they're systemically racist. Wouldn't that be reason enough to say, wait a minute, let's start moving some rocks and see what crawls out from underneath here?
Yeah.
But they're like, no, because it to me, I'm sorry to say this, but I think it's for most of the average people, not the people working in Washington or the people that are more in the know, but to most your average person, I think it's a really simple calculus. Trump's a fascist, and so any group that's against Trump must be good. And so if Trump criticizes Big Pharma must be good. And if Trump criticizes the FBI must be good. And I'm sorry that I like it's how you could look at like I mean, to me, it's just some of the stuff you've seen with the January 6 people that, weren't even accused of violence. And you see 14 FBI agents show up armed to the teeth to arrest them, or someone who was protesting outside an abortion clinic, or someone like, who's kind of an annoying person like a Roger Stone or something. He'd show with cameras. They drag him out in his underwear with all these armed people.
Yeah.
And these people clap like seals. And I'm like, man, you used to like, come on, like with me, we used to protest like the treatment of people in prisons in this country. And now you're just like 100% like, lock all these mother effers up. We don't get it. Man, it's frustrating to see.
Yeah, where's the decarceral state when you need it?
Yeah, right. Where are they? All this, all January 6th, that's a bridge too far. Those people don't deserve the same sort of, abolition of prison that you used to cheer for. It really is. It's
they didn't get cash free bail.
Of course not. And to me, it's just. And then you see it, I didn't even think to ask you this, but you see it with the Daniel Penny, right? Where it's,
I was gonna say I thought we were gonna get that too at some point.
Yeah. I still got like 20 minutes, 30 minutes if you do.
Yeah, I'm good.
Good. I mean, great transition to that. I think Daniel Penny, like to me, really the people. I think there's a racial component to it, obviously, but I think a lot of it is sort of political partisan lines where Penny represents sort of a lot of Trumpism, where it's like crime on the streets and we need to get tough on this, and he's seen as a person with privilege that went too far by so many people. And so many of these people that would say about law enforcement being too harsh on people, all of a sudden they
Mhm.
want to throw the book at this guy. I mean, were you with me? I think the prosecution was an injustice in itself.
Oh
But
yeah, he should never have been charged. He should never have
did
been
were
charged.
you? Okay, here's a question for you. Here, we'll start here. Were you surprised that after this sort of tactic that was used, and you could explain this to my audience better than I can, where they dropped the manslaughter charge, the most serious charge, and
Yeah.
then went for sort of a compromise charge of the negligent homicide?
Yeah.
At that point, I was surprised that it came back a not guilty verdict. I thought there would be a compromise charge.
Um. Yes and no. I mean, I think they were hoping they could kind of nuke their way through it, and I think at that point, the way they did it, they were hoping that they were making a gamble. Either they were probably they made the gamble. It was like 11-1 for guilty. Obviously, it sounds like it was 11-1 for not guilty, and then the jury bullied that last person. Like, and this happens at times. Juries will sit there and basically just start screaming and treating that other person like a piece of shit till they get what they want. So, yeah, I think they thought they would have the advantage there. They thought they could game the system. I think it's dirty pool, but remember, the prosecutor can dismiss charges at any time. So, I think that was highly, highly unethical the way they did it. But they have the right to dismiss them ultimately. And yeah, they were trying to force a guilty verdict. And they just turns out they were wrong. Now, we haven't heard from jurors yet to say what they thought, and I'm not sure any of them are going to come forward
I
for
wouldn't.
fear of retribution.
Right.
But I mean, it looks like clearly it was clearly not guilty was the majority of the jury, and it just took some convincing of the holdouts.
Yeah,
And, yeah.
I read it the same way, that it's probably one or two people held out, and then after that manslaughter charge, they probably were then convinced, I just want to go home. Like,
Yeah, well,
you know,
there's some of that, and the other thing though, somebody I follow on Twitter, I forget which one of the attorneys I follow, it's actually pretty. He made a pretty smart comment of, well, if you're one of these steadfast people who think Daniel Penny murdered the guy and it was horrible and he killed him, that person could have got disillusioned and say, well, shit, if you don't care about this, I don't care about it, and said not guilty. So, I mean, we don't really know yet. I'm sure at some point the truth will come out. Because like the George Zimmerman case, that's always a good example. The straw poll in that 6-person jury was 3 not guilty, 2 guilty of manslaughter, 1 guilty of murder, and it took them a while to get those 3 to say not guilty. So it'll be interesting to see, because eventually those things will come out.
What is the legal ramifications of having dropped the manslaughter charge? Could that charge be rebrought?
Nope, it's done. It's
Okay.
gone. It was dismissed with prejudice. And also at this point he's been acquitted. So of that, and yeah, this it would be a double jeopardy issue at this point for them to cut back with it.
Yeah, it seems to make sense. Like, the spirit of it seems to suggest that, but I didn't know if there's some legal
Yeah,
loophole that they could try.
no.
Now, he would still, there's a possibility that he could be sued civilly by Neely's family, right? Just being acquitted of the criminal charge isn't a defense necessarily to a civil
It
charge.
depends. It depends. Some states, for example, like here in Ohio, if you were acquitted, or if the grand jury decides not to indict you, you can use that as basically like as a short circuiting of a civil case, saying I acted lawfully and that person acted unlawfully, and it's not a wrongful death. I don't know if New York will allow that, but certainly it doesn't necessarily stop them from filing a suit. But I think very quickly Daniel Penny's going to be able to blow them out of the water on that, regardless.
If he had been found guilty, is
Yeah.
there a potential call for mistrial if the allegations are true, that you could hear in the courthouse people sort of protesting and
Hmm.
sounding like menacing or threatening, allegedly? Could there be a case for a mistrial to say, look, the jurors were intimidated?
I mean, you could make the argument, but would the argument work is the bigger issue. And I'll be honest with you, probably not. It's probably not going to carry the day, and that's just because, and I don't know if I've mentioned on here before, courts of appeals have a very, very helpful little magic trick in their pocket. You could argue it's a special tool that'll help them later. Um, to quote Mickey,
I got it. I got that reference. I've
yeah.
seen every one of those damn episodes.
It's a special tool that'll help us later. They pull it
Thank
out of
you,
their
Toodles.
pocket.
Yeah.
Yes, it's called harmless error, meaning even if it was an error, he's guilty. We don't care. And I've had that happen, many a times. Cases where the prosecution makes comments about a Fifth Amendment right to silence during a closing argument. That thing when the judge tells you in your plea, you have the right to remain silent, and nobody can use that against you at any point in time. And yet, when they do it, they violate your right to silence. The Court of Appeals looks at the transcript and goes, "Yeah, but he was guilty anyway." I mean, they will find excuse if courts of appeals did their job, the trial court systems would collapse because there'd be so many cases going back for retrials. There'd be so many cases getting reversed and vacated, and people getting cut free. So they don't do it. Remember, like I've said before, I say on my channel all the time, there's 3 branches of government, and they're all part of the same tree. And one of those branches is the judiciary. Tree branches don't attack each other.
Right.
So they're generally not going to do it. And I mean, yes, having the jury outside, the jury getting intimidated is an issue. There were a bunch of problems in the case, sure, but I'm not sure that those would have been enough. I mean, generally speaking, most appeal issues are not going to win.
Huh.
You're already behind the curve. You're trying to. It's like challenging a penalty in the NFL. You're trying to convince them to go the other way, and it's really hard.
It seems, given Bragg's track record, where it seems that they're trying to go lighter on a lot of criminal defendants that are accused of violent crimes, is there any potential legal ramifications for a claim of selective prosecution in that, or is it just there's so much discretion given that it's like, look, you can just do this as a prosecutor,
I mean, sorry to say this, chat, but yeah, I mean, it's that there ain't a whole lot we can do about it. I mean, prosecutors have prosecutorial immunity. They have a lot of discretion in what they do. So, yeah, that's it. I mean, Daniel Penning's like, oh, I'm going to sue Alvin Bragg. It's like, I don't see where you're going to get anywhere. I don't understand your legal theory about how you're going to get it done. So, I'm sitting here saying like, oh boy, I think it'll be great, but I don't know how you're going to do it. Prosecutors have immunity. There's prosecutorial immunity recognized by courts, and that's basically an absolute immunity. It's a complete immunity. It's very powerful. So, yeah, I just don't see anything. I don't see anything happening.
Yeah.
Sadly.
I mean, and look, to me, that is very similar to what we were talking with the pardon power, where it's like almost a necessary evil, right? Look, I think Bragg, I think Letitia James.
Hold on here real quick, Rob.
No problem.
Somebody just dropped 50 memberships in there.
Oh yeah, on my chat. I was trying to be polite to you. It was just.
Oh yeah, no. Don't be afraid to something like that. Interrupt.
I saw
somebody just dropped 50 subs.
Thank you.
Let's go, Gerald.
Just Gerald, who has been. I'm not shitting you when I say Jess Gerald's probably donated 500 subs to me in the past month and a half. I mean, just incredibly generous.
Gerald, you're helping pray the gray away. That's right, chat. We're praying the gray away here tonight.
Thank you so much, Jess Gerald. And I promise I'll get to the rest of the super chats that were given as well. But yeah, thank you. I didn't. Yeah. I always try to make it a policy for the courtesy to my guests. No, that's
okay. But when it's something big, like it's like a couple bucks, I get it. But like if somebody dropped a red boy in here and dropped like a hundo on you, you have my permission to interrupt and get it done.
Thank you. I'm glad.
I would take no offense to that.
Thank you again, Jess Gerald. Incredibly generous. Thank you so much. You're the best. And I am going to have sub content only coming out. I've talked to my wife. I think the first of that might be you all get to watch me struggle to put Christmas lights up here tomorrow. We'll see how that goes with my herniated ass disc. We'll see what happens.
Oh no, that sounds bad.
It's all right. That's the biggest problem in my life right now. I'm doing pretty damn good, so I'm not going to complain about it. So let's transition, if you don't mind, to transition real quick to Luigi Mangione, is the assassin of the.
It's the me.
Just from a purely legal stance, like what would you suggest? It's just insanity defense. Is that the best that this guy's going to have with all the evidence stacked against him?
I mean, it's going to be hard to figure out what he's going to do here, but it should be interesting. It's going to be an interesting case. I mean, just the fact they haul him out of the police car and he's screaming about how he's set up and it's all like it's going to be very interesting. It's going to be very, very interesting how this all got cooked up. But yeah, I mean, I'd be questioning his mental faculties right now, like 100%. But I have the feeling he's probably going to come back pretty sane. I mean, the threshold for sanity and competency is very low. What you may think of, like me and you sitting there, like if we're sitting on we're sitting on a bench in a park and you see a crazy guy, you're like, that guy's crazy. By court definition, he's not.
Right.
The definition of insanity and the definition of competency are far, far different, and they're far lower. I'm sorry, they're much higher. They're much higher. So it's really hard to get declared one of those, and I don't think he's going to be able to.
I've tangentially been involved with this because my job, what I do, I work like 70 hours a week, is I deal with adults.
You help the guy get on the bus.
That's right. I do.
Oh, you do? Oh, okay.
I do. No, I really do. I work with adults with developmental disabilities like autism. And I've never had someone that I worked with a lot, but people I've worked with temporarily in my company have been criminally charged for stuff. And part of the defense that was offered was, well, they don't, sort of insanity by virtue of illness, but they know right from wrong. So it didn't matter that they had this diagnosis of autism because and one of the things you'll learn about people with autism, they're brutally honest most of the time. And so when you sit down and you do a psych review, they're able to determine quite easily. Do you know what right from wrong? Did you know you weren't supposed to steal that woman's purse? Yeah, I knew it. I knew that was wrong. Okay. Like, now there was leniency based on the condition given in that particular case, but there wasn't an offer of not guilty by reason of incompetency. That wasn't.
Yeah, there's a lot of mitigation, but it's still, you got to pay the piper type of thing.
Right. So this mitigation came in the sentencing portion, not in the guilt portion. But what are your feelings on, for me, I've tried to be consistent, steadfastly against political violence. I understand there are philosophical claims that there have been times in the past, in history, where we could say what we might call some form of political violence was justified. I don't think anything remotely rises to that case that I've seen in my lifetime in the United States. So what do you think about the fact that it seems so prevalent, particularly on the left, but there's some on the right, as I've found in my audience, that basically are like, this CEO had it coming because of how bad our healthcare system is.
I mean, yes, at some point, do you want to sit there and say, like, base? And, like, I get people wanting to do that, and everybody likes to be an edgy boy, and yes, there is an idea of, fighting the power and all that, but that is a dragon you do not want to uncork, and I see it turning into something we really don't want, and it only goes from there, and it only accelerates. And it's kind of like Ted Kaczynski. There's a lot of things Ted Kaczynski was really right about, especially like our adherence to technology and us getting enslaved by the systems, and the idea of like non-productive work that we do that's just idle work. A lot of those, there's a lot of things where you're like, we should probably unplug a little bit and detach ourselves from it. Now the rest of it, that we should live at some like we should live in like 1833 and live like, we're at like Walden Pond. I'm like, I don't necessarily like that part. Or we're going to start sending mail bombs to people. Like, not really liking that part. Like, I get it. You could say like, the Killdovers is base too. And it sounds great till it's like he's running through your town.
Right. He runs over some kid and then it's like,
Well, but to be fair, he didn't do that.
Right, I know.
Uncle Marv was actually pretty good about taking care of people and being safe.
Thank you to the
safety first.
I thought it was interesting. As soon as you said Kaczynski was good, I got a new follower. They seem to. I'm sure they'll be like, "Yes, tell us more how Kaczynski's good." Click, click, click.
Yes.
No, I see exactly what you're saying. Look, two things can be true at the same time. I think we should staunchly be against these forms of political violence, but you can say, "Listen, if you were involved, like." If you're take healthcare out of it because there's such a debate anyways, but like if you're someone who you're a shady attorney whose job is going out there and pressuring people. For example, I used to hear cases like this. I don't know if this is true. Maybe you'll tell me this isn't. I used to hear that there were lawyers that would go into sort of communities, particularly small communities, and they would threaten them like, if you don't pay us off, there's all these violations you have because you don't have handicap ramps. And
Oh yeah, ADA trolling. It's a thing.
yeah. So like, I get it. I get that you like in that's more directly. Okay, this person directly screwed your mom and dad out of business.
Yeah.
So you're going to take matters into your own hand. And I get why that person, it would still be, I would say, no, you don't get to assassinate them. But I will say, listen, even though that's true, and I'll defend that you shouldn't be assassinated, maybe you ought to think twice about your career if there are people raising to that level of vitriol. So I do think that, yes, it's okay to have a conversation about corruption in healthcare, corruption of CEOs, etc. But we have to draw the line to say this is unacceptable. The way I put it for my audience is this. Look at the people right now on the left that are like based, right? Who do you think those people on average thinks more evil? This CEO or Donald Trump?
Yeah.
So if you're like, well, if I think it's base to attack someone who I think's evil, okay, well, the people that don't like you think you're evil and think the politicians you vote for are evil.
It's very much the idea of what's evil. Well, it's the idea of like who's rich. Rich is a really relative idea. To many people, making the idea of making $75,000-$80,000 is rich.
Jess, sorry to interrupt you again, but it looks like Jess Gerald donated another 50 memberships.
Another 50 subs. So let's go, chat. This guy's killing it. Let's go.
I feel like I owe I don't know, some karaoke night or something for all the members or something.
There you go.
I did successfully. This is true. I successfully, and I know people aren't going to believe it, but making an ass of myself, drinking a little one night, I was able to complete the song "Forgot About Dre" at 1.5 speed. So,
oh wow,
yeah, the old debater in me that talks like an auctioneer. So that's a good. Rob has 2 beers in him, and I can't drink like I used to back in college, so I end up singing rap songs. You know what the hardest part about doing karaoke with rap is? On YouTube, you're going as fast as you can, but you got to avoid those N words. So sometimes that becomes a bit of a challenge.
It's like Office Space.
Yeah, right. Yeah, like that's one of my dude. What a banger open of a movie, right? Where he's like jamming, then just puts his window up, locks it. That says so much. Like what a great movie. Mike Judge, fantastic.
Yes.
But yeah, I think that the other thing is for me coming on the perspective of being a Trump voter and someone's coming on the right, like. When your opponent's making an ass out of themselves, let them make an ass out of themselves. And if the lesson learned wasn't that there's sometimes the left could go too far in the 2024 election, I don't know that the big news cycle immediately afterwards is a bunch of lefties, including people that allegedly were journalists like Taylor Lorenz, coming out like, and here's the name of some more healthcare CEOs. Like, it's like the damage that they're doing.
From her, that's rich. From her doing all the crying and complaining about... like bullying to like people actually getting clipped, and it's like, I remember like she was literally bawling her eyes out, and then she shows up at like Chaya Raichik's house, and it's like, do you really want to go down this road, Taylor? Like,
yeah, well, it's always your words are violence and their violence is language. That's how they. Jess Gerald, by the way, another 50 memberships. Thank you, man. That's 150 so far. What a man! This guy's a hero. At this point, he literally is paying for my car to get. I just had to pay $600 for my car to get inspected. So this guy's single-handedly.
You guys have that crap out in.
That's right, Ohio, the free state of Ohio. You don't have to piss with that shit.
Oh, also, it just finally now became illegal to use your phone in the car. So
really, it is legal.
Illegal.
It's illegal. So I don't know what the law is in Pennsylvania. I think you could do hands-free, maybe. Yeah. But
that's a rule here too.
It's complicated. You could certainly be pulled over. I've known someone who's got pulled over just having their phone set up on the dash with a GPS on it. And the cop's like, you were looking at the phone, and it's like, right, my navigation system is the phone.
Yes.
So it's certainly, I've seen it be used as an excuse, but I don't know exactly how the thing. Someone says $600 for the inspection. Well, no, the inspection's like $30, but the tie rod end, the alternator, the battery, because the reason I got it inspected a month early because all right,
and then you had to take it to a legit shop to get the work done. That's right. Too.
So let me ask you this, Sean. Are you married by chance, or
Soon to be at some point
good?
here. Coming up.
Congrats.
Thank
So
you.
let me tell you a little something about marriage. My wife doesn't have many
Well, it's not
advice.
my first one. It's not my
Oh,
first one.
okay. Uh,
Yeah, we're on two. We're
there
on
we go. I'm still on
Mrs. Murray
number one.
2.0.
I'm 10
Okay.
years. I'm doing strong.
Congrats.
Thank you. We all have vices though, and my wife's vice
Yeah.
is one of the simplest ones possible. She likes the vape.
Yeah.
You know, the not weed, just like the fruity
Yes.
ass. They smell good though. It's like it's better than cigarettes. It doesn't smell, anyways, we have a damn near blizzard here the other day, and my wife's dropping these little hints all day, like, you should probably go to the store and get a vape. But finally I see her putting her shoes on. I'm like, what are you doing? She's like, I'm going to get a vape. And I was like, no, it's a 5-minute drive. Let me do it. So I take my car. I get 3 minutes away and my car stalls.
Oh.
So I was stuck on the side of the road. But now I win every argument for the next month because my wife's like, you didn't take the garbage out. I'll be like, remember when I got stuck in that blizzard trying to get you a vape just last week? You remember? So I'm good for a month. I'll win every argument. So, but that's what happened. Then you have to get the car inspected and whatever. So there's mine.
Oh,
But Jess
that's
Gerald's
fun.
taking care of it. So
Yeah.
if he donates 50 more, then I'll be able to get my wife a vape on top of paying for my car inspection.
Yes, but with another 50 subs, let's go, Gerald.
It's crazy. It's amazing. I will have to. I don't know if you've experienced this.
Mm.
The generosity of some people that regularly watch like channels like ours is incredible. I'm humbled that anyone even wants to hear what some redneck like me has to say on anything, let alone people that It's amazing the things that people will do. Even just kind words, but donations. I had someone send me a piece of the demilitarized zone fence from North Korea. I had that sent.
Cool.
I had giant American flags, hats. Someone sent me a shirt, and you'll probably know this. You're about my age. You remember the dude that he just died actually from Australia? The succulent Chinese meal.
Yeah.
Someone
Yes.
sent me a shirt with that guy on it.
Get your
last
hands
month.
off my penis.
Yeah. What's the charge? Eating a meal? A succulent Chinese meal? It's epic. I'm always amazed at how generous people could be. And it's nice to. I don't know how many viewers you average, but it's nice to be a little smaller and not have an insane toxic community too. So you actually feel like when people are generous, it means more than just.
Yeah. No, I hear you there, and I agree, and I like my, there are people there, and I do enjoy that. I do enjoy that. There are people that, it's just our thing, and there is some, that idea of a little bit of like, intimacy with that you have that, your regulars, and you get the people join, and then it grows, and it grows kind of slow. Yeah, no, I think there's something definitely to be said about that.
Well, and I think that one of the things I recommend to people is that are like, how do you get streaming? You got to know why you're doing it, right? If you're streaming because you want it to be a career, I have almost zero advice for you because I'm not good at that. I'm never going to be like a super huge streamer. But if you're doing it as a hobby or because it's something you're having fun, I think that just being yourself is the best thing, because what happens is when you play a caricature, you build a community that's not organic, and then someday you'll do something against character, and then all of a sudden it doesn't work out well. And I think you see that in a lot of bigger channels where it's like all of a sudden you have one opinion that's contrary to what you're supposed to have, and whoops. For me, it's like my audience hates half the stuff I say, so it works out quite nicely. I don't have to worry about saying something that they'll disagree with. So, the last time you were on with me, I talked about, I think we were talking maybe about Tyreek Hill. We briefly talked about, you remember he got pulled over there?
Yes.
And my audience fucking hated my take on that, where I was like, I think the cops went too far. They were like, no. But I was like, I'm sorry. That's just how I feel.
Yeah,
I felt that,
and the funny thing is, like, everybody in Memphis is like, yeah, they went too far.
Yeah, I mean,
And that's why they're all being prosecuted.
Yeah, I mean, it's for me, like I sympathize with police officers a lot, probably more than some might think. For someone who's as critical of one of my big issues that I don't hear many people on my side of the political aisle talk about is I think that the condition of our prisons in this country is despicable. Like, I'm not going to shit on anyone for making jokes. Jokes are jokes, whatever. But the fact that the reality is that prison rape is so prevalent that we joke about it as frequently as we do.
Yes.
Again, I'm not criticizing the joke. That's fine. The joke's fine. What I'm criticizing is the reality that it's that bad. Like, that's not acceptable to me. I believe that we should have harsh penalties for violent crimes, but I also don't think that we should have a prison system like that, where it's like, you go in for a white collar crime and all of a sudden you're fighting for your life every day. I think that
Yeah.
that's not. I think we could do better. But you don't hear a lot of that coming from like the right
Yeah.
side of things. People think there's a contradiction for being like, I believe we should have severe penalties for crimes, but I also think the conditions of our prisons are despicable. I don't see the
Yeah.
contradiction there. I think that having a harsh
No,
sentence
it's
doesn't.
not a contradiction.
Yeah. So, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I enjoy having an audience where I could disagree. Anything you wanted to say? Again, my guest tonight, potentially criminal Sean. Any topic you wanted to cover, or anything you want to say before I
Um,
take up any more of your time?
Not tonight. Not tonight. A little bit later tonight, we're going over Sarah Boone. She's a lady. She murdered her boyfriend by shoving him in a suitcase
I saw
and killing
that.
him.
It's crazy.
Yeah. So she just got sentenced. She dropped like a 30-page letter to the judge, and she's like apparently not very happy. So
Let me ask you just
we're gonna
real quick about, because the number
yeah
one question I heard people ask about this is,
yeah.
how did she get him in the suitcase? My understanding was it was like we're playing a game.
Well, I
Is that
think I think there was actually a little bit of a get in there, or I'm gonna beat you to death with a baseball bat.
oh well that's
I
the first I've heard that. I didn't know that
Yeah,
was
well, because there was a baseball bat involved, and there was some blood on the stairs, things like that. I think she threatened to beat him, and if he didn't get in the suitcase, she was gonna hurt him. And I think he did it, and that's one of the ways. Or she beat him, knocked him out,
and then put
and then shoved him in there. I don't really know, but all we did learn from that trial is because she filmed him all the time. The woman was a complete psychopath. So
yeah, I'd heard that it was like, let's play hide and seek, and then somehow he
yeah,
got in there and she zipped it, and then she wouldn't let him go, which
yeah,
made sense. Which made sense from the perspective of the small clips I saw. She's like giggling and laughing, but I guess if she's a
yeah.
violent psychopath, that also makes sense why she would
Yes,
be giggling and laughing as well. So no, that's
yes,
cool though. I think that'll be interesting. So
yeah,
can you tell people where to find you? I'll post your link, but can you just let people
yeah.
know where to find you?
Yeah, you can find me on YouTube at Potentially Criminal, on Twitter at LawTube Sean. Obviously, I do a lot of just law stuff. Like last night, we were talking about Kendrick Lamar and Drake and the lawsuit they're about to have. But if you go on the Twitter, obviously, I talk about a little more things than just the law. But you can find me on both those places. And then those are the places you need to worry about. So.
All right. Well, hey, Sean, it's always a pleasure. Maybe we'll have some Jay-Z stuff to talk about next time you're on. It looks like that's gonna be spicy.
Well,
So
that whole thing is
bad news, definitely.
yeah.
But it's gonna be rife for like people's criticism and comments on it.
Oh yeah, there's gonna be a lot of content.
So
There
hey,
will be content.
thanks again. It's always great talking to you. I really appreciate you coming on the show. Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Rob. See
Take
ya.
it easy, man. Yep. All right. Great stuff. Oh, there, I always do that. Not meant to see that screen. Not that there's anything crazy. By the way, when I always tell people assume that any private messages you have on something like Discord will eventually be made public, it's not just because it'll be malicious. Something like that oftentimes happens. You end a Discord call and you're streaming, and all of a sudden your private chat you had. Now my private chat with Sean just like, hey, you ready to go? Yep. Like that. So there's nothing. But you got to be careful. That's why I say, to me, it's always best practice. Yeah, Sean's great. I love talking to him. And I think, I was interesting because when we were talking about potential subjects and he brought up sort of the training and weapons and personnel from Ukraine going to Syria, I was 90% sure that he was going to be highly critical of that. But I didn't know for certain. So I thought there might be a little debate there if he was like, this is based. Great. I'm glad we're sending this stuff. But no, he was on the same page as me. Let me make sure that I get to any super chats that were said before we continue here. So give me one chance and we'll get on that. No, for certain. Oops. So Jess Gerald, again, 150 subs. Just absolutely incredible. Absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much. Wrongful Rage for $10 said, quick story of another Nick. There once was a law pope that did unlawful coke, and lo and behold, he tripped on his something and on the toes dirty 304. Allegedly, carry on. Wrongful Rage, even though I didn't read that chat while I was there, I saw it, and I did try to bring up Nick Rakita and whether or not sort of, if when he criticizes Nick Fuentes, if people come back at him, but you were sort of connected to Nick Rakita. I don't know if I made that question clear. because he sort of responded he wasn't worried about threats. But I wasn't really worried about the threats when it comes out. We'll talk more about Fuentes in a minute. Cody Folsom for $2 says, hope all is well, Rob. It certainly is. Bubblegum Gun. Thank you so much. I gave you shit the other day. But I always appreciate people sticking around, particularly if I give you shit and you stick around. Thank you so much, Bubblegum Gun, for $2. Says, Martin Shkreli is based and dig God's work. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And then, of course, Jess Gerald says, in addition to the 150 membership, gives himself a membership and says, much love, Rob. Chat, everyone, enjoy yourselves. Thank you so much, Jess Gerald. It's been incredibly generous to me. Really appreciate it, man. Yeah, don't worry, Stabby. I'm not going to check those out. Nick Fuentes, I saw a couple people that took umbrage with what Sean said about Fuentes, particularly two things, him being a Fed and him being a closeted gay person. I have no clue. Let's start with Nick Fuentes' sexuality. I know next to nothing about it. He may have affectations that people would associate with femininity at times. I don't really know or give a shit about that. Given sort of the sorts of political or cultural arguments that Nick makes, would it be a bit of schadenfreude if he was actually gay? Yeah, I guess that would be the case. I just don't really give a shit. And I'm not going to dive into his sexuality. What I will say is, I think that it was a heinous and malicious rumor that people were spreading that he was the person who was involved in oral sex with Destiny in that video that was released. I didn't see any proof of that. I see that as Nick being a person who is very much unliked in many circles, and so people sought to smear him with that. And I didn't see any evidence of that, and so I'm not going to jump on that bandwagon whatsoever. I'm operating under the assumption that that wasn't Nick Fuentes. Just saying. So there you go for what that's worth. As far as Nick being a Fed, that seems to be an issue that I would have more interest in. It is true that Nick was saying some things on January 6th at the rally at the Capitol that were things that other people have been charged and arrested for, and he wasn't. Does that mean he's a Fed? Maybe. Maybe the feds purposely chose not to charge him because they thought that charging him would give him increased credibility, and not charging him would make him look like a narc. It's like you see this in, like, Law and Order episodes or, police dramas all the time, where, like, the cops will they'll be like, yeah, bring in John. And they'll drag John out of his cell in front of all of his gang member friends. And they're like, okay, spill the beans. And he's like, no. And they're like, we're going to tell everyone you spilled the beans. We're not going to charge you. We're letting you walk free today. Now everyone will assume. They'll assume that you did it. So maybe that's what's going on. I just don't know. I'm not prepared to say that Nick Fuentes is a federal asset. I'm not. But I respect Sean. Sean may have looked into it more than I have. He's welcome to his own opinion on it. I know very little about Nick Fuentes, if I'm completely honest. Yeah, it could be. They think that Nick being out there does more damage to the right. I don't know. But that's that. That's all I have to say on that particular topic. But yeah, I really enjoyed. I agreed with the vast majority of Sean. What Sean said there. I think that it was nice to get some clarification on the specifics of what that pardon meant and things of that nature. Someone said to me that my take on the pardon was wrong because I said I might consider not pardoning my son for the crime of murder or sexual assault or something like that. But when it came to peddling influence, that would be different. Yes, it's objectively true that if you do a crime like peddling influence, that could be worse for the broader country in general. But the questions would be, well, who is he peddling influence to? The rest of my family? And that's something that's harm spread out over many people at a lower level. So everyone's peddling influence in Washington. If my son was charged, I'd probably pardon him. Like, murdering an innocent person seems to... I'll be honest, I love my son a lot. He's only 3. Right now, I can't ever imagine little Hank doing anything like that. But if he did, and I still feel the same way I do about him now, I'd probably pardon him even for that crime. But I think that there's a difference in the level of those things. Pardon January 6th take. Yeah, I mean, there are certain people... Crucible Cliff says, I'm prepared to say he's an asset, but fair enough. There are certain people that I think maybe... you'd want to look specifically if they are accused of acts of grievous violence or something like that, that you don't do a pardon. But I think a blanket pardon for everyone who was nonviolent, I completely agree with. And I think there's a solid argument because we're probably going to see how much the feds were involved in encouraging and allowing the violence to occur in the first place, that maybe a blanket pardon sends the right signal and is exactly what should happen. So I'm more happy with a complete blanket pardon than no pardon. I'll say that. Murder is not usually a federal crime. That's true. But in the case, there are instances where it could be federal. I get what you're saying. And what Pat O'Brien's saying there is you can't pardon as president for crimes that aren't federal. But you get what I'm saying in general. The only point I'm trying to make with that is the idea of a son or a father pardoning his son is at least understandable to me. Even if it's unethical, even if it's immoral, I understand that. As someone who imagines the love that a father would have for their son. Now, in this case, it might also be to help protect his own ass and the ass of all these other people involved in the political process that were covering up or involved in sort of the exchange of favors that were going on with the Hunter Biden situation. Nonetheless, but for me, the pardoning of the gun crime, it was like, I get it. The pardoning back to 2014, I think, is the bigger issue. What are you going on with, Banu? A lot of profanity there. A lot of anger. What do I got coming up? Tomorrow there'll be a show. I'm taking two suggestions. One is we're going to get through the holidays, and I'm going to hit January hard. I'm already trying to put up multiple shorts a day. I think you'll notice that I put up 3 or 4 shorts a day. Here, I even put one up. I'll show you now. One of the shorts I put up. I enjoyed this. I enjoyed doing this one immensely. Sometimes I'll even put up a short that's not politically related. And I did one of those today. Let's see what you think of this.
My offer.
Here we go. This was a short I put up based on reality here. It just happened to me not long ago. Oop. Oh, where's the... We don't want that. So this is Hank. I asked him if he could clean his toys.
Where is this? Nothing.
That's my son.
My offer is this.
From the great Godfather
Nothing.
2. Yeah, that's my son. I'm like, what if we, hey Hank, what if I play with you afterwards? What if we watch the show you want? What if and he's just like, no, I'm not going to clean any toys up. He's a very shrewd negotiator. He knows I'm weak. He's just like, here's what I'll offer. Here's my counter offer. You get nothing, and I do whatever I want. It's like, that's pretty strong negotiating tactic there for the Hankster. Jack of Trade says, I'll give you $20 to do a short as Luigi Mario. Talk about the healthcare assassin. I don't know what I would do. Treats work sometimes. Sometimes he's in a mood, he'll help clean up, but he wasn't buying it today. And I haven't seen my son since last Sunday. So the first day I come home from work, it's just party time. He's not really interested with, negotiating with stuff. Enigma says, what's going on with Pisco, the rabid anti-Trumper? He needs a paper bag to help him hyperventilating over Trump. Any back and forth? I've not talked to Pisco since the election. I talked to Pisco before the election. I called in for about an hour on one of the spaces he did about Tony Hinchcliffe's alleged racist joke against Puerto Ricans, which Pisco was hyperventilating about, and I talked to him about that. We also talked on that space about me putting the word lawyer in quotation marks and how I thought he was being a crybaby about being upset about it. But I did say I would not do that anymore. So fast forward a day or two later when Joe Biden said that Trump supporters were garbage and I was mocking Pisco, was like, and he's like, no, there's a hidden apostrophe, trust me. And I had said I hadn't seen that. I hadn't seen Pisco that outraged since someone put his job profession in quotation marks. He took that as me going back on my promise. I didn't think it was. Joking about the situation isn't putting his name in quotes again. So he said that that was a shitty move or whatever. Okay, so I hadn't talked to him since that. I've heard that basically it was strongly suggested to him to not talk to me anymore because I'm blacklisted on Destiny's channel. And I don't think Destiny liked that he allegedly was defending me to Destiny at times. So I think that there's probably a portion of those two things and just not taking the election loss well. And so to just ignore people that are critical of him probably is easier than having to explain, for example, why MAGA's satanic, which I saw was something he was posting today. Okay. So he just comes across as someone who's flailing and unhinged. But to be honest, at least he wasn't flailing and unhinged in the way that Destiny was, where Destiny was basically, well, I don't know if I wanted that bullet to kill Trump or not. So, I don't know. That's how I see the case. I still wish no ill. I still like Pisco more than I like Destiny. I wish no ill to either of them, though. I will be doing a short on Destiny probably tomorrow. Destiny, I saved the screenshot in my phone for my short. Destiny made a claim about, let me bring this up. He says, Catherine Brodsky says, they aren't wrong though. For all their faults, the right is more likely to debate right now. Although they aren't that keen to have people from the left on its guests as their show, blah, 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 blah. And Destiny responds, sorry, LOL, what? Where are these right-wingers debating people from the left? Big words from a man who blacklists and bans people like me that smack him around in debates. Big words. So, I'm not going to go after Destiny for the leaks and shit. I said my piece. I feel bad that shit was leaked for him. If he sent that without the consent of the people involved in those videos to someone else, that's shitty, and I feel way worse for those people, and that's shitty of him to do. But as far as, I don't think anyone deserves to have intimate videos of them leaked online, whether it be someone you agree with or disagree with, whether it be someone you think has shitty political takes or a shitty personality or not. So I'm not going to cheer for it, and I don't give a shit. There's enough ammo for me to shit on someone like Destiny about his garbage political takes. I don't need to wade in. And by the way, you know, meanwhile, simultaneously, while those videos are being leaked around the same time, I got someone coming in my Discord, in the general chat of my Discord, who's giving me shit because the Wilsons, Andrew Wilson and Rachel Wilson, are grifters, and when am I going to call them out? I don't know what to say. I don't delve into the personal drama shit like that, really. I don't need it. I don't want it. Look, would I be a bigger streamer if I did? Probably. There is part of me, you only get to see part of me. What you see is authentic. This is who I really am. But it's never going to be completely who I am. When I'm sitting around with my friends from high school or from college, the discussion gets a little more personal and maybe a little more crude. Maybe a little more profanity. Maybe a little off-color jokes. Maybe you laugh when an embarrassing situation occurs to someone. But when you're presenting a stream, maybe you'd say, I'm not going to wade into that. Maybe I'd talk a little drama, me and my wife and friends talking about, a former friend of ours that cheated on their wife or something. Maybe there's a little personal drama we're talking about by bringing that baggage on stream. You see what I'm saying? So I don't begrudge anyone. I used to watch the shit out of Steve Wilkos, you know? I watched 90s wrestling, Attitude Era Wrestling. I have my thoughts on OnlyFans people and stuff like that. But it's not really what I want to do for content. I don't begrudge the people that do. In a heartbeat, if I wanted to yell at OnlyFans girls, Andrew Wilson would get me on the whatever podcast. He would do that for me. And my channel would blow up. But I'm not going to do it. I just don't have it in me. I could do it. I know the spicy shit to say that people would be like, oh, snap. I could go on there and they'd be like, rate my looks. And I'd be like, 2, 1, 3. I did watch Celebrity Deathmatch back in the day. I remember that. No thanks, Jack of Trades. I'll keep my clothes on for everyone's sake. So, I mean, yeah, and that's true, Rizzle. Everyone's content creator is a grifter to some degree. It's true. That's certainly true. Enigma, you think I'm in a more comfortable and a better headspace? It's probably true. I'm always better when I'm home. My back hurts less today, too. I was having a bad back day the other day. I mean, Manu, watch sort of some of the stuff you're saying in chat. I don't want, when you're using hard R words and stuff like that, it's okay like once in a blue moon, but I don't know. You just seem to be going off. I don't even know if you're going off on me or what's going on, but just a little careful there, man. But I don't know. I just don't really give a shit to wade in on that. So I don't really care about the drama. I just don't. Luigi did have back. That's true. Luigi also had back pain. Good point. I've showed you that. So here, I don't know if I could. How these photos will show up here. I'm going to try to show you. I showed this on stream, my herniated disc. So if you have any kids watching, time to end the show. I'll be ending soon. So I got an off-colored joke here. So, kids, good night. Thanks for watching me. All right. Let's see how well this shows up. This is a picture of my herniated disc. Now you can see the bottom two discs there. It's the top of those two that's causing me the majority of the problem. So that's an MRI of my two discs. Actually, the one above has a small herniation, but those two are clearly the worst, and then the top one of those is the one that's. So, I really wanted to get in good with my doctor, right? And the reason was, I wanted on official doctor letterhead for a back doctor to sign his name and write an official letterhead that the reason that my back was herniated was because I have a huge penis. That's what I was going for. And then I was going to carry that official letterhead around. So that's a picture I sent to all my friends. I was like, yeah, the doctor is out. The diagnosis is out. I'm just too well endowed. My back couldn't handle it anymore. Of years of walking around stacked. But I never had the nerve to ask the doctor. That was the plan. I was gonna be like, Doc, come on, could you just sign something for me? But I never asked. Yeah, I do. Stomach muscles do protect my back. And when I went for physical therapy, that's one of the exercises they had me keep doing, the stomach exercises. See, Hector knows. He's got the same problem. Yeah. So, that's where my back pain came. But no, maybe me and Luigi both have back pain, but I don't plan on doing anything crazy. I really like my life. I'm not down with the political violence or anything of that nature. So... all right, so the two things that I'm planning on is I got to come up with an idea in January for what I'm going to do for a 10,000 subscribers show. There's all sorts of things. I want it to probably be either uber political or not political. I mean, one idea I had was just like 4 debates. I want to do a 24-hour show that's 24 debate opponents, a different one every hour. And have different moderators, right? One moderator do the first 4 hours, and another moderator do the next 4. I would love that. I think that'd be great. Whatever topics they want to talk about. People on the right, people on the left. I would love that. But as a precursor to that, maybe for the 10,000 sub special, we do like 4 one-hour debates. We get 4 different people. That's a possibility. Or do something completely non-political. Like my wife could do the show with me. We could do an AMA. We could do video game stream. karaoke stream, whatever you guys want. That's another possibility. The other thing I need help with is subscriber only content. I got people like Jess Gerald that's throwing around 150 subs tonight. It's unfair to not come through with the promise of what does it mean to be a sub? What do you get that's different by being a sub on this channel? And so I got to come up with an idea. Some ideas that I'm kicking around is having specific call-in shows that are subscriber only. I don't know how to do that logistically though. I guess I would have to, if you're a sub, then you get some sort of special authorization on Discord that you could call in. That's one possibility. Also, subs get to recommend debates that I'll review. So if you're a sub and you send me a recommendation for a debate, I'll try to do that. That'll be tough, seeing as how I'm going to have hundreds of subs. So if hundreds of people send me the debates to review and they're all different, it might be tough for me to get to hundreds of debates to review. Come on, Jack and Trade. Have a special channel on Discord only for them. Give them direct access to me, like a daily email. That's something that I thought of, but yeah, anyone who has ideas, let me know in the comments below the video so I could read them. So below this live stream. And then as always, I'm going to be putting out more short content and shorts and regular videos. One other thing I want to say, at least all of the shorts that I'm making now are now going to Rumble as well. Scott Horton versus Bill Crystal. Scott Horton's book just came today. He sent me a copy of his book. It's 670 pages. So I'm going to try to get that read. Also, the great Sarah Kane has just wrote a book, which I'll be ordering, and I want to read that as well. And then I got an awesome book sent to me by a viewer on nuclear war, which I want to read as well. So I got a lot of reading to do. I got to find time for that. I do a lot of books on tape, if I'm honest, because I'm fat and lazy. The biggest reason, I actually prefer reading a physical copy of a book to a book on tape, but the reason I do a lot of book on tape is because so much of my job is driving. A lot of people that I work with that have disabilities, they love going for car rides. And they'll actually either, sometimes they like listening to the radio, or sometimes they like listening to like books, even if it's something that traditionally it would seem like they don't have an interest. It's sort of relaxing to them to just hear someone talking. So I get to listen to a lot of books while I'm driving around. So I'm looking forward to reading those books. But that's what's coming up here. And then there's someone named Alex PWF. Does anyone know who that is? Alex reached out to me. Tom Follery said, "Hey Rob, can I put you in touch with this dude Alex? He wants to do a debate on the election." I said, "Sure." And then Alex reached out to me and was like, asking me a bunch of questions. He said he normally does dating content. And then he asked, playing with fire. That's it. Yeah. He used to hook debates with Andrew. Okay. And he asked if I was a trad con. And I was like, no, not really. So I don't know. Yeah, I do plan on trying to get out. I actually probably in this past year probably lost about 20 pounds. I've been trying to eat better, and before I hurt my back, I was doing really good doing yoga every day. And my neighbor is a gym rat now, and he's really trying to get me to go out to the gym. But I don't think I'm going to be doing much barbell lifting until my back gets in better shape. It's gradually getting better, so I'm hopeful. I can't figure out the TikTok invasion thing. I can't figure it out. I could do it on my phone, but I can't do it on the computer. But I would love to do some sort of content like that. Maybe that'll be I'll do a subscriber only. That'll be my first subscriber only video. You guys could watch me muddle through trying to do a TikTok invasion to figure out how to do it. Cables are a good in between, yeah. Well, I'm starting off with just the back yoga, the DDP yoga, just specifically with the back. And then we'll see if I get my back in a better place. And then start doing non-weight stuff like push-ups, pull-ups, etc. That's sort of the idea. Yeah, I know Andrew could help me out. Andrew's a good guy, and he would help me out. But he's super busy too. Deep Nutrition by Catherine Shannon. Yeah. Seated exercise machines. Yeah, that's all good advice. Thank you, Manu. I know. I've heard that. You gotta be careful. And do squats like Kurt Angle. Yeah, it might need more followers. That might be the problem, Theo. What about on X? What about X? So I'm live streaming to X right now. I try once in a while to do spaces on X, and it'll literally be like 2 or 3 people listen. So tough. It's been tough sledding there. I don't know. I might spring for the X Premium and hope that helps my engagement on X. Creatine, yeah. Tell you what, though, my neighbor, he's a Marine. He got jacked, man. He loves it. He loves the gym. I think he works out a lot of, like, bullshit from his job at the gym. So he puts up with a lot of shit at his job, and I think then he gets home and just, instead of getting angry, like, instead of coming on and debating lefties, he's just lifting insane amounts of weights at the gym. But he's a cool guy. I'd love to have him on for a show someday. You guys would love him. He's a great guy. My diet's been markedly better. It really has. I've been trying. My biggest motivation to getting more healthy is my son's becoming more and more active, and I want to make sure that I'm there for him. Playing baseball and all that good stuff. T-ball starts next year, so I want to make sure that I'm as active as possible. All right, man. One of these days tomorrow I got some downtime, believe it or not. And what I want to do is I'm going to come up here not live, which I rarely do. Almost all the content you see me putting is literally what you see. There's very little I'm doing behind the scenes. And tomorrow, I'm going to change that. So I'm going to do a couple things. He backstabbed Andrew. Oh, okay. I'll be careful. I'm going to do a couple things. One of them is I want to learn how to raid people on YouTube so that I have 94 people watching on YouTube right now. I think that would be something that would be nice to do. I only have 13 people watching on Twitch. Twitch as a platform is just really going downhill for me, which is okay. I still love my fans that are on Twitch, but it doesn't get near. But for over a year, it was the biggest platform that I had, and it's just not there now. But that's okay. Yeah, I've seen Pisco melting down on the Young Turks. It's just sour grapes. Yeah. But let's raid someone on Twitch here. Who are we gonna raid? Do you want to raid Pisco? You guys be nice. Be nice. John who? John Burke? Oh, shit. What's his channel name? Why don't I see it? Oh, there it is. Yeah, all right. We'll do John Burke then. Be nice to John, everyone, because John's probably going to be talking trash on Trump. So be nice. But I like John. By the way, say what you will. Criticizing Trump probably got rid of that terrible health guy. So. All right, guys. Thank you so much. I appreciate all of you. Thank you especially to Jess Gerald with the incredible donations. Everyone who donated financially, I really appreciate it. Remember, the more you guys are able to donate financially, the more I can put money back into the show, work less hours, and do more content. So we're going to have more stuff coming up for you. Tomorrow night I should be streaming between 7 and 8. Should be a great show. So thank you so much, everyone. As always, have a good one.